everyone, to the Board of Selectmen meeting for April 17th, 2019. If there's anyone recording this meeting besides WACA-TV, could you let us know? No one else? Okay, thank you. I'm going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mark, would you care to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, and traditionally we also begin this meeting with the reading of our vision and mission statement. So if I could ask Selectman Mignani to read the vision statement, and then Select Person Greaves to read the mission statement after that.
Sure.
Please, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vision statement: the town of Ashland will be a prosperous and physically sound community with a full range of housing, business, cultural, educational, and recreational opportunities in a safe and attractive environment for residents and visitors.
Thank you.
In the mission statement, the Ashland Board of Selectmen is dedicated to promoting responsible fiscal management, advocating for sustainable development and growth, and providing excellent municipal services which will enhance the quality of life in our diverse community.
Great.
The Ashland Board of Selectmen is committed to providing clear goals and objectives for town management and creating effective engagement and public participation with residents, state legislators, and other elected officials in order to achieve our mission.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone here for citizens' participation? Please come up to the podium.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, welcome. Missed you last night.
I missed you too, Mark. And I did miss not being there, but I heard it was a
Okay.
very good forum, so.
It was, and I know it's on the agenda to be talked on later on. And I would like to say thank you to the town manager and all the board members and the municipal fire chief, police chief go to Boston yesterday. What was it, Tuesday?
It was yesterday.
It was yesterday.
It was
The
an
old-
Eversource day yesterday.
Yeah, it was an Eversource Day, yes. And I read the article and read all what the people's comments were, and a sit-in meeting. Could have stand up and protest. But last night was last night, and tonight is a new one. But then again, what happened last night was a historical thing. Stood up to a company. We stood up to a company and showed what we of Ashland is about. But then again, does not make them turn us out.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for citizen participation? Okay, so our first item is the labor's training proclamation, which is going to be rescheduled, I believe, right?
That's correct.
So we're not going to be doing that. Are we ready for the Silver Strong Walk parade permit? Is anyone here for that, or do we need? Oh, sure. Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm loving this orange and silver bow. My name is Amaris Peña, and I am a friend of the Ducas. And I am here representing Melissa and Halle Silver. I am the secretary of the Jake's Team Foundation, and we are organizing a walk to kick off this foundation, a walk for June 22nd. We have had discussions with the police already and auxiliary help. They've already drafted the route for the walk. It'll be a 2-hour event, if that. It starts at the high school, ends at the high school with an informal, essentially, celebration of life and the bench that we have dedicated to Jake and his friend who also passed away from osteosarcoma a few months ago. For those that don't know Jake, he passed away a few weeks ago of osteosarcoma, and we're raising, the goal of this foundation is to raise funds for pediatric cancer. So we're here to request a permit for the walk. Okay.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the permit? Or?
No, it looks like
They've done
the
what they need
police
to.
have been involved, so it looks like we're in good shape.
Do you want to just say while you're here, if people wish to contribute, how would they do that?
Sure. So in the next few weeks, we're gonna open registration for the walk. For a specific amount, you get registered for the walk. All the money will go, like I said, to pediatric cancer. You get a T-shirt, and all the pickup of the T-shirt will be on the day you register for the walk on the June 22nd. It starts around 8:30 or 9, but you'll see more details on Facebook and
Okay.
the web and around town. We expect a good amount of people to show
think so,
support
yeah.
because, like I said, the orange and silver bows have been pretty famous here in town, which is a great form of support. So we are asking people to look out for notices on Facebook and social media as well around town so that you can join us on the walk. Yes.
A rain date?
We don't have a rain date yet, but we may have to schedule a rain date.
Okay.
I'll bring that up. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So do I have a motion to grant the parade permit for the Silver
I
Walk?
move that we approve the parade permit for the Jake's Team Walk happening on Saturday, June 22nd.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, I have the next item is a scheduled 7:30, the Hanto change of officers. Do we need to do that at
I
7:30?
think we need to reopen it at technically at 7:30 and then suspend it until
Yep.
the next
Alright.
date. So I would suggest maybe if
Are the-
Wanna
are
move
the-
down?
the UGC is here, we can.
Are they here?
Well, I do think we might be expecting some more
Okay.
residents from the neighborhood, so we
All right.
might want to
Okay.
wait till
That's
7.
fine.
All right.
Consent agenda.
Yep.
Get rid of that.
All right. All right. So we're gonna move to the consent agenda?
Are we posting the consent agenda to see?
Can you do that?
Thank you, Sue.
We can
And if you want, we
probably
can move
get
into the
through,
priority projects.
probably
Yep.
get through a number of these things here. We talked about VA grants and.
Oh, yeah, you wanna do that?
we
Let's
can
do that.
that.
Let's get that one, yeah. Let's do the BA. Did any members wish to pull any of the consent agenda items?
Nope.
Anybody want to comment on any of them?
Nope.
Michael, we got a new
No.
dispatcher and a new van driver, so that's very good.
No, move to approve the consent agenda as provided.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Consent agenda's passed 4-0. Very good. We're moving along here. Okay, I think, Steve, do you want to, I think we're thinking we can do the BAA Spring Grant Award recommendation, if that's all right with folks.
Yep, okay. So, we had met last week, Rob and I, as the subcommittee, and we have provided a list of recommendations. We did pull out 6 applications for additional information, which we have been provided, and Rob and I plan to meet one more time to review those and make a second recommendation. But you have in front of you the basically the big wave of recommendations,
Get into it.
right?
There's a whole.
I think it's substantial. I mean, I think it's almost $40,000 of grants at this point, so I think it's at the very bottom of the,
And a lot of creative ideas and very,
yeah. And while we're talking about the grants, maybe we can talk a little bit about the runners that contribute, that do a lot of training, spend a lot of time, and they do it on behalf of our community in order to support a lot of great programs, some very good ideas here, and we've been doing this for how many years, Susan? It's been maybe 5 or 6 years we've been doing this?
Probably been a little bit more.
And I think you mentioned the other day that we're the only community, the only host community that does this kind of program.
what was it?
BAA loves us. for it.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
so that's tremendous.
And just to recap, so we get X number of bibs, and then we give them to people, but they raise money for the town, basically. And we
Right.
use those funds to do these grants, so.
And we had we always host a breakfast the Saturday before the the marathon, and we had a nice breakfast this past Saturday. Very good. Thank you, Susan, for all your work. So again, before you have our recommendations.
I think the highlighted yellow. And except the yellow highlighted ones are the ones we're holding back, right? Was it the yellow?
The yellow highlighted ones or the ones that
I'm
have
sorry, it
zero
could be-
next
oh,
to
no.
them?
The ones that have zero.
Oh, okay.
Right, there you go.
Okay.
Shows how long I've been gone.
I think the yellow was deferred in the fall.
Yeah, so they submitted in
Yeah,
the fall. and-
those are my
No, that's
color
fine.
codes.
Very
I got
nice.
it.
Steve, I have to say, Steve, of course, you may have sensed this, but Steve has done most of the work on this. Well, I'd say 90%.
So any questions on the
No, I think
specifics?
it's- No, I think it's good. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. So
Okay.
I move that we approve the BAA funding as submitted by the BAA Grant Subcommittee.
Second.
Motion's been made and second to accept the BAA grant recommendations as listed. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0.
And thank you for
Thank you,
your
guys.
work, because
Yeah.
I was looking through them, and I'm like, wow, there was a
of work
lot of
there.
detail this time, which was good.
Well, we asked for that.
Yeah, it was
And
nice
we
to
asked for
see.
some follow-up, and so it was good. There were a lot of good applications, some new, different ideas. You know, a lot of the support for the garden club, of
Right.
course. You know, we've got a lot of legacy programs, you know, the community center with their exercise program, you know, Ashland Day certainly, so the decisions at every turn. So Rob, you and I are gonna have to schedule a quick meeting to
Yes.
just review
To the six
the six
remainders,
that we pulled out.
Okay, any other items that, Michael, you want to give us any updates that think you can do now, or?
Well, I can either go through, Board of Selectmen priority project updates, if you would like me to.
Sure.
Go ahead and
'Cause
start on
that will
those.
be relatively quick, I hope. So just on the rail transit district, obviously, we'll be talking a little bit later tonight about a potential age-restricted development. But since we last met, the Friends of the Upper Charles Trail scheduled and organized a site walk along the RTD property where we're looking at potentially putting a section of the Upper Charles Trail. I think it was well-attended. I believe we had over 50 people.
Nice.
We had to break it out into 2 different segments, and I think everybody had a good time, and I think they developed a good appreciation of the site and the potential of the site, and because it really is very unique. It's restored wetlands. That was very, very expensive to restore, but I think you could definitely see the
And the note, it's an old trolley bed, so that's really, something that really fits in. And that's one of the last remaining segments of the old trolley line,
Yeah.
so particularly appropriate.
So it was very informative, and I think at the same time it was motivational. I think everybody left there looking forward to completing it.
And that's, sorry, Michael, but that's also the portion that we've applied for some grant money for?
That's
For that
correct.
trolley?
That's correct.
For
That's
that line?
The engineering. Also, just in relation to the YMCA, we should be having kind of a planning meeting on May 2nd, the day after town meeting, to discuss how we're going to go about doing a needs analysis in the communities of Ashland, Holliston, and Hopkinton, which will be the communities that are going to be served through this regional facility. So, move forward with that.
Could I just ask the members of the audience just to, don't talk so loudly so you can distract us up here.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Use your inside voices like I tell my children.
So the second item is the public safety building. I wanted to let you know that we have received signed contracts from Vertex. We just are going through the rounds of getting the signatures, our signatures on the contract. Jen did receive a price proposal from HKT today for the architectural and engineering services. She's yet to go through that, but it's nice to see that moving forward as well. So item C, downtown improvements. Of course, as you know, the big vote is happening in a couple of weeks in terms of the capital plan and getting the funding necessary to move that project forward, and really unlocking up to $4 million in state funds for the project as well. Today, actually, ironically, I should say. Today, we met with representatives of Eversource Gas to discuss the gas line throughout downtown and just making sure that it's going to be marked out and making sure that everything would be copacetic when we ended up doing the undergrounding the utilities. And then I did want to give you an update that we'll be removing some of the excess signage next week. Roy Correa will be leading that effort, so I think you'll actually see a big difference once that's done. I really have no update on the townwide strategic plan today. On the Warren District, we're looking at the demolition of the barn. Those bids are due
The 25th.
the 25th of April. And then we're also starting to make some headway on the RFP for the Hall House. So, and that would be disposing of that property to a contractor who would restore it and get it to a level that would be on the National Register of Historic Places.
Very good.
And just as part of this, we always added on the Valentine property. That, I don't know if you've driven by there recently, but a lot of work has been done clearing out a lot of the brush and stuff. So thanks to Dave Foster and his group for getting that put together.
Can I go
There-
back to, oh, go ahead. Yolanda.
Just following up on the the Valentine Estate, is there looking at timing for some kind of public forum in regards to what we want to do with that space? Because that's, I think, the next big decision before we start doing any real work
Oh, okay.
inside the barn or inside the house, I would think.
David and I haven't discussed a date or
Okay.
anything. It is on his radar. We still have some of the just the sealing up work to do. So we're actually
Okay.
working with the veterans construction team who will be
Oh, okay.
coming in. They're actually looking at repointing the chimney, also where the sunroom was connected, blocking that up a little bit more securely than what is
Okay.
there currently.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question, to go back to the Warren District, with respect to the demo of the milk barn. How long will we be looking to put bids out for the restructuring a new milk barn?
Well, we'll need to do the design and engineering bid
Yep.
first. And I know Jen has been having conversations with David about that and starting that process pretty shortly thereafter, after the demo happens.
Do we have somewhat of a timeline roughly? I mean, someone asked me this yesterday, and I didn't have an answer to them, so.
I
Still
don't have
up
an
in the
answer
air.
I would
Still up in
be
the air.
comfortable giving
Okay.
right now.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else? Well, do you guys want to do speaking roles? Is that a good, for a town meeting? Does that sound,
12 minutes to do it.
I think we can get through it that way. Okay. All right, so, Michael, I don't know if folks just want to get out the warrant.
Yep.
Just for the members of the audience, so the members of the Board of Selectmen do introductions of certain warrant articles, so that's, we're just gonna divvy up who's gonna talk about what. Usually we do this and no one's watching late at night, so. So, anyway, so Michael, do we have a list of what articles that we would be speaking on? So I'm starting with is Article 5 one that, the new revenue account, or is that,
Yes, that is the new special revenue account.
do you want, do you want one of us to introduce that and speak about it, or?
If you don't mind, I would like to take that one
Okay.
on. And that was actually the recommendation from FinCom when we
Sure,
discussed it with
okay.
them, so.
So I'm assuming everything through Article 5 is gonna be someone else, right?
Yeah.
Did I get that
Okay.
right? All right, so Article 6, the Robert Hill Way transfer. That's one of us, right?
Yep.
So Steve is not around, so it's
Correct.
us three. So who wants that one? Joe, do you
You want
want
me to do it?
Sure. That's your
I don't
thing,
mind
right?
doing
You're
it
on the
if you want me
Affordable
to.
Housing Trust,
I
okay?
feel a little awkward requesting money being on the Affordable Housing Trust.
Well, then I'll do it, Joe.
Then let
Yeah.
Yolanda
If
do
you're
it.
awkward, I'll do it.
No.
Sure.
That's fine.
Well, being on the
Yeah.
trust.
All right.
That's
just-
fine.
Thanks.
Yeah. Article 7's a perennial favorite, transfer to OPEB trust.
And Steve won't be there to do it?
I did it last time,
Oh,
actually.
Yeah.
You did a good job, too.
All right, I'll do that one. Everybody loves that one, that's a great one. I don't, the South Middlesex, Article 8, the amend agreement for the South Middlesex Vocational School District.
I will say Superintendent Evans is planning on being there. That
Okay.
being said, you may still
Still
want to
wanna
introduce him.
Introduce them.
All right,
I
somebody,
can do that.
Joe,
Joe?
okay.
I did 9 last year, so I have no problem doing it again,
Okay,
if need be.
This is, the next one's the CPA folks, right?
Yep.
Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'd like to do 11.
Oh, okay. Oh, very good. Are you going to speak in favor? Just
Yes,
kidding.
yes,
Oh,
I am, Rob.
okay. All right, Article 12. Oh, that leaves me with another exciting one. Is that, or is this one yours,
No,
Michael?
12 is,
This
Yeah.
is your thing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else that, the fingerprinting?
Yeah. So the
that
last two
leave
are
me with the
fingerprinting and the
fingerprinting?
IDDE discharge.
Okay. Oh, is that one? Okay, Article 14, the illicit discharge. I
Correct.
thought we were pulling that one.
No.
Or maybe that was just my hope. No?
And that's the stormwater
This
committee
is
will
the
do that one?
stormwater
Yeah.
police.
so you get the fingerprinting one, Rob.
I'll go with fingerprint. Does somebody want to do stormwater? I'll do that one too, and I'll make fun of Rob when I do it.
There's that.
No, I won't.
That's not ours.
Yeah, they're gonna do it.
Oh, all right.
I'm not gonna use on that.
So did I sign up for those last two or not? Does anybody want
I
to do
thought
illicit?
stormwater was doing the last one.
I thought stormwater was.
I
the
want to
last.
introduce them.
Oh,
No, I guess.
You can.
No, you know, I'm gonna
Less
stay
is
out
more,
of that.
Rob.
I'm gonna
Less
stay
is
out of
more.
that one. I'm staying out. Okay.
Okay, so we each got 2.
All right,
That's
have
good.
we used enough time? No, time is crawling by for some reason. Okay.
Wow. You know,
Do you want to do any updates, Michael?
yeah, I mean, I think we can get through town manager reports, and then that'll leave the bulk of the time for
Okay.
UGC and then Eversource
Eversource
discussion.
review.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Very
Wow.
good.
So we may have to interrupt at 7:30 just to open and close and
The
the
Hanto.
Hanto, right?
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a challenge. I know when I'm being challenged. So I do have good news on the town planner position. I have offered the position to the town planner of Cohasset. His name's Peter Matchak. He has accepted. We have a little bit of a formality in that the planning board needs to consent to the appointment, but I hope that 2 of the planning board members being on the screening committee and being on the interview
Helped.
committee,
Okay.
that should not be a problem.
Great.
You hope.
Could I just in a nutshell, why is he leaving Cohasset to come here?
Because we're a great town to work for.
I knew that, but
So-
anything else, really?
No, I mean, I think he's looking forward to a larger community.
So we're a little
and,
bigger in Cohasset, okay.
So the Department of Public Works, just wanted to let you know that they received a $60,000 asset management grant to do some work with Ty and Bond. And that's actually to look at some of our stormwater assets and catalog those and determine
Wonderful.
a project. And then also, with Green International, we are working with them to put together a pavement condition index. So this is a scientific index of the condition of each of our streets. So it will better help us determine which streets will need to be paved in the future, and what streets may need to be resurfaced or crack sealed. So we're getting kind of high tech.
We just had someone ask about if we have a road pavement plan, so it'll be good to get this done and have it in place. I mean, we've always had one, but I think this will just go a
We have
little further.
this one's with iRobot, I believe. That's
iRobot,
yeah.
okay.
So if you see little robots along the road, that's probably that's what it is. Update on the Business Incentive Program partnership with Needham Bank. So this is something we'll talk about in more detail at noon tomorrow, but I am pleased to say that as part of our business improvement program, Needham Bank has agreed to partner with us and has actually been willing, or is willing, to donate up to $40,000 to subsidize the interest in our no-interest loan program.
That is awesome.
It's something we've been working with them on for about probably a year. It's gone through a lot of hurdles, mainly on the Needham Bank side. Of course, we needed to get legislative approval through a home rule petition that town meeting passed. in May of 2018, so we're really excited about that. Just for those who are watching, if you do not know, the budget and capital plan for town meeting are both on the town website under town meeting. So you'll see it listed as the FY20 budget document. So it's coming in at 401 pages this year. I don't know where Brittany was able to cut out a few pages, but she did. And obviously, we're always very proud of the work that she does putting that
Do we have
together.
any hard copies at the library, or could
We have
quote
not
one?
printed hard copies
Okay.
yet. I can do that if you would
I
like.
think if we could have one at the library for, maybe not to take out, but certainly if people want to go sit there and they're not comfortable or not as, don't really want to do it on the computer, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, can do that. And then I just we haven't met, I don't think, since we had that bad fire at 306 Union Street. So it happened on April 5th. Yes, it was just a couple of days after our last meeting. It was a pretty hard fire to get under control at 306 Union. The fire department did a great job. Police department did as well. And actually Public Works, they did a great job of basically getting to the situation, making sure that people got out, got the fire under control. At the same time, what has to happen is you have to set up traffic control points. Jen's real proud that I was able to insert traffic control points in a description today. But that takes a lot of work, and it has to happen in the blink of an eye. And it's
Yeah.
very, very coordinated. So Chief Alfano was the first, actually, no, it's the second structure fire that he was here for, and he's.
Wasn't there two that same day? Or no,
There was
two
two, but
incidents.
then I
Yeah.
was thinking about the one 2
Wow.
weeks back. So just want to extend a thanks to everybody who worked on that, including the police, fire, and DPW. And actually, Human Services has been doing a lot of good work after the fact, helping these people and helping them find shelter, getting the things that they need. So
So the Wednesday after the fire, they were able to hold a resource fair and brought, SMOC was there, and some other state, entities to help with housing, and then also resources to help with clothing, furniture, and transportation. And so of the 11 people who have been displaced, 3 have found alternative housing that they're going to be in the process of moving. They're in the final stages. Some are staying with families, but the Human Services Division continues to work with them as they're.
That's good to hear.
and the emergency fund has been critical, is a critical partner in this as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So just another good example
Yeah.
of Human Services and what we're able to do now.
And I got one of the neighbors said the fire department was there very quickly and kept it from spreading, so that was very good work.
Yes.
So,
So, that's
okay.
it.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Well, I think it's close enough to
Yeah.
7:30.
Yes, I think so.
All right, so a move to reopen the Hanto hearing that has been, that had been rescheduled.
Second.
All those in favor of reopening the rescheduled hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed, none? Okay, so the hearing's reopened.
Yeah, and a move to suspend the hearing until May the 15th at 7:30, Wednesday, May the 15th at 7:30 here at Town Hall.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
No.
Okay.
Everybody in pair? Okay, so we're going to suspend it and reschedule for May 15th at, what time did you?
7:30.
7:30.
7:30. That seems to be, okay.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, so that's been moved to May 15th. Very good, okay. So that brings us to the presentation on the potential age-restricted development on the RTD property from United Group of Companies. And is Tom Powers here and the other folks? Why don't you want to come up and, I presume you have a presentation you want to just go over with us, and this is your second visit here, and we've had some conversations in between. So we certainly appreciate you coming in and showing us what you've come up with. We had at a previous meeting, which was, I'm thinking, what, 2 months ago?
January.
That's not bad. Oh, good, thank you. And I don't know if you have any extra for the folks you might want
Thank
to
you.
pass around out there.
I printed one out, so if you want to give, yeah.
Well, you know what, yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to make it
That's
available,
what
if you
we
want
have,
to,
Why
but
not
yeah.
pass those out to
Yeah.
some of the folks?
that'd be good, just
Thank you.
pass it around out there, that'd be helpful. And do you have an electronic presentation as well? Okay.
Susan's very thorough that way.
And so we had a number of comments and ideas were discussed last, at the last time you were here, and I think you agreed to go back and see what you could do with those. And so that brings us to tonight's meeting. Now, just to kind of give a little, I guess, just basic background for this presentation, the United Group of Companies is working with the landowner in the rail transit district. The town is not the landowner here, it is a private party. And they have the right to develop it under current zoning. What is the current zoning, Michael?
252 townhomes?
Could be, but what is it just residential?
It's multi,
Resident.
it's senior,
Yep.
senior active adult.
No, I'm talking about the current zoning.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
it's senior
it's senior townhome.
Okay.
Story.
Multifamily dwellings.
And so what these folks are getting, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, they want our support for a kind of alternate kind of vision and a different zoning there. And so that's really what this is all about. Just so people know if we can't come to an agreement or we don't move forward, they will, maybe someone else will go and develop the townhomes as currently zoned. So just wanted to kind of give that background, so.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board of Selectmen and woman. My name is Tom Powers, and I am a principal of Powers Realty Development and Consulting LLC. And I am here tonight and going forward as the project manager and development consultant for the United Group of Companies, who are also here this evening, including Michael Ussolini, who's the president of the United Group, who was here previously on January 16th, and Bill Flanagan. To start with, I'd like to briefly mention, and I think Mike Herbert can confirm, that I personally have been directly and indirectly involved in the Ashland Rail Transit District since November of 2013. I was directly involved with Magunko Rail Transit LLC in negotiating the Ashland Rail Transit District Master Development Agreement and the amended covenant to the Ashland RTD zoning bylaw with the town manager at the time, who was Tony Schiavi. I was the procuring cause and directly involved in bringing the Campanelli Thorndike development to the Ashland RTD and working with Campanelli Thorndike, Ashland, and Magunko on the Ashland $6 million MassWorks grant. The MBTA access road redesign documents, the 5.9 megawatt solar farm, and the pending sale of Lot 2 to the United Group. I have intimate and familiar knowledge of the Ashland Rail Transit District zoning bylaw and covenant, as well as the towns of Ashland's concerns with the rezoning of the RTD, the open space requirement, and most importantly, what is actually or potentially could be built on the RTD, and specifically Lot 2. Personally, some of you have met me before, some of you have not, but I've been involved in commercial real estate development, finance, construction, investment sales, consulting, and leasing for over 35 years. And I've worked with local and national real estate investment companies, including the New Boston Funds, Bluestone, Continental Wingate, Goldman Sachs, Whitehall Funds, and some of you, most of you know, the Campanelli Thorndike companies, to name a few. I have been involved in acquiring, permitting, developing mixed-use retail and multifamily apartments along the Atlantic seaboard and in Texas and Florida, as well as suburban and downtown Boston commercial office buildings. To briefly review, the United Group of Companies is a privately held, vertically integrated commercial real estate development and investment company with holdings, interests, and/or development projects in multifamily, student housing, market rate, affordable housing, commercial office, and retail properties. United currently holds interest in development projects and existing assets in Florida, Georgia, New York State, Colorado, and United is actively seeking investment and development opportunities here in Massachusetts, similar to the Ashland Rail Transit District proposed development, which is a senior active adult multifamily development for seniors. United is a multifaceted company and provides site identification, permitting, approval, development, construction management, financing, leasing, property management, investment, sales services. Essentially, United is a seamless, full-service real estate investment and development company. Michael, Bill, and I come before the board this evening to follow up on the January 16th meeting, and to ask the board to engage in a discussion on how to proceed with the town of Ashland to obtain an Ashland RTD zoning bylaw modification to allow United's proposed 178-unit development. As you know, United was contemplating a town meeting warrant article zoning bylaw modification submission for the Ashland May 1st town meeting, and after consulting with our counsel, Phil Jack of Wise and Jack, and speaking directly with Mike Herbert, United was advised that this timing was not appropriate and the Board of Selectmen would not sponsor a proposed zoning modification bylaw warrant article. Therefore, United postponed its interest and efforts and decided to not proceed with the zoning bylaw warrant article. United comes before the board this evening asking the board to engage in an open discussion as to how to proceed with United Rail Transit District's senior active adult independent multifamily housing development proposal. United would like to acknowledge and recognize that Ashland requires a formal, well-managed, well-orchestrated zoning bylaw modification process that needs to take place so the town has given the chance and the residents and abutters and the municipal authorities have ample time to understand, vet, consider, debate, discuss United's proposed Ashland RTD zoning bylaw modification, which United desires. United would like to emphasize that we intend to work with the town and provide ample time and opportunity to participate and voice their opinions with the zoning modification process. To that end, I would like to mention that on December 13th, 2018, the Ashland Planning Board, and specifically the then town planner Sheila Page, held an open discussion, question and answer public meeting to kick off the zoning bylaw modification process. On January 16th, 2019, United came before the Board of Selectmen to introduce the company, their background and expertise, and provide some background into what United's intentions are what United's intentions are with developing Lot 2. Since January 16th, United has stepped back and reevaluated the development, the process, and what is the best interest of the town of Ashland, its residents, abutters, and United as a development company. I would like to mention that numerous conversations have been held with Mike Herbert regarding the development of Lot 2, the number of units which the site can support, and the open space requirements that are imposed on the site and the property. United has reviewed Ashland's master plan, the Ashland Housing Production Plan, and we recognize that the town of Ashland would like to maintain and develop a diverse housing stock on Lot 2 that includes both affordable market rate senior housing, which addresses the needs of the Ashland town residents. United acknowledges that Ashland would like to have both affordable and market rate senior housing component for the project. United also recognizes that Ashland is at the 4.5% housing threshold in the eyes of the Department of Housing Community Development, and United's proposed development will add to the Ashland affordable housing stock and thereby increase the threshold to over 6%, which is a benefit to the town of Ashland. The development will provide senior affordable housing, minimize demands on the Ashland's infrastructure, namely the Ashland public school system, as compared to potential 40B projects. Provide a means for Ashland to thwart 40B developers for the next 2 years with use of the housing production plan. It will generate commercial tax revenue for the town and add to the Ashland open green space inventory. United's intention and goal this evening is to ask the board to review, discuss, and focus on a process and a discussion as how to proceed with a proposed senior housing multifamily development and obtain the Board of Selectmen's support and approval for sponsorship of an RTD zoning bylaw modification. United is prepared to briefly talk about the latest revisions to the site plan after listening to the Ashland residents concerned at the January 16th Board of Selectmen meeting. However, our primary goal this evening is to establish a process going forward and how to effectively work with the town of Ashland. Last week, I forwarded a brief memo to Chairman Scherer, the Board of Selectmen's Administrator, Diane Mortensen, and Mike Herbert, outlining the discussion points United would like to engage the board in this evening. I have also distributed a handout which follows last week's memo and formally addresses United's questions regarding the process going forward, which I would like you to turn your attention to at this time. For the board's benefit, I would like to review the discussion points and then ask the board to address and comment on these questions. And thereafter, we can focus a little bit of time on the actual site plan.
Yeah, I think just, Tom, one thing, so yes, that sounds like a good plan, but we are going to look at the site plan, because I think that's probably one of the
Okay?
most important aspects in this. And we have folks here, can people see the site plan from where you're sitting?
We can turn it around.
Yeah, you may want to just turn that around, because we've seen it. Maybe you
Yeah,
can,
we've got-
and
we
I
have
don't know,
maps.
Miles, can you focus on it at all, or? Yeah, okay. Okay,
Which camera are you gonna use, Miles? The one by the clock or the
The
one
good
in the
one.
back?
a good
The
one.
good one,
The good one.
the one by the TV. So turn it a little bit more and move it in front of the
Over you.
podium. There we go, there you go.
Thank you. It's a little cockeyed, Bill. You could straighten the right-hand leg. Just slide it up a little bit.
Great.
Yeah. That's good.
Very good. All
So,
right,
t-
thank
so,
you.
so to
go
give a
ahead.
little, so to give a little quick background on the property total is approximately 38 acres. When the town of Ashland acquired the Lot 3 parcel, there was a deed restriction that was applied to Lot 2, and in essence, 20 to 24 acres of the 38 acres would be deemed restricted and would ultimately end up as open green space inventory for the town of Ashland. So therefore, the site really, at this point, is really about an 18-acre parcel of the 38. So when we came before the board and we presented an initial idea, which frankly was an initial idea, it was really, we were trying to maximize the site for the obvious reason that it's on a hill, okay? And if you look at the entrance to the site, the elevation is 284 feet. The property rises up to 384 feet, and then on the back it drops down near Baldwin Circle to about 254 feet. So it's very expensive to shape the site, it's very expensive to build on the site, and it's very expensive to run all of the utilities, underground utilities, build the road, retaining walls, et cetera, and get basically a tabletop surface to build the buildings. It's just frankly, it's expensive. It's not a flat, football field, if you will. When we came before the board on the 16th, we presented a site of 180 units, which was in 3 four-story buildings. And that was the initial design, and it was to maximize and get to the 180 units. After listening to the local residents of the town and the abutters, Apple Ridge specifically, along Russet Drive, Baldwin Circle, and the Rain Drive, we felt that the 3 four-story buildings was overbearing, and therefore we removed or eliminated one of the 3 buildings. So what you see now is you have two 4-story buildings, 72 units per building in 4 stories, and then you have so it's 100. That's 144 units, and then you have 34 townhomes. And the idea was to remove the building, the 4-story building that was closest to Apple Ridge, and insert the townhomes, whereby you would end up with a transition from the single-family homes in a subdivision. You would sort of transition over to the townhomes. The townhomes and the garage sheds basically are somewhat of a camouflage, if you will, or they basically are going to break up the 4-story buildings and transition it to the 4-story buildings. Secondly, the idea was to push the buildings back as far as we could to the property line so that they would more blend in with the Campanelli Thorndike Cirrus apartments, and thereby make it look more like it was a sort of a natural, addition to the Campanelli site. So I think, what we're trying to do is we're trying to increase the buffer zone. So we have the Area F, which I'm not sure if everybody knows what that is, but that was a 100-foot no-touch zone between Apple Ridge and the property line, where it was a no-touch zone, can't cut trees, can't do anything. So in certain areas, we have increased it to 154 feet. In other areas, we've increased it to 175 feet. So we've gone beyond the 100 feet, no-touch zone. So we are listening to the residents, and we're trying to, accommodate those wishes and do what we can to maximize that buffer zone, if you will. This is a second revision, a second draft. Our intention would be to hold some town forums, neighborhood association meetings. I would personally like to go door to door and meet with the individual residents in Apple Ridge, along Russet, Lorraine Drive, Baldwin Circle. We literally walked the site tonight, and we were up there. It was a gorgeous night. If you if you haven't been out, you should. It was beautiful. But we were up there, and we were actually looked in. We tried to envision what does it look like up there, and the leaves have not sprouted yet. So you get a general idea of what the view is going to look like from, you know, the neighbors' backyards and their, you know, their windows, you know, looking through and across the buffer zone into Lot 2. So we're cognizant of it. We want to sit down with the neighbors, and we want to understand what their concerns are. We want to try to mitigate them as best we can, as reasonably as we can. Obviously, you know, Magunko Hill has been there forever, and it's been undisturbed. So, you know, any change is going to be a change that obviously people are going to be resistant to. But we think that the ideas that we have put forth with the townhomes transitioning to the 2 4-story buildings is a lot better than what we had before. And honestly and frankly, the idea is, you know, we would not propose it, but a 40B developer could come in there and they could try to maximize and put 252 townhomes in there. Granted, they have a zoning bylaw, side yard setbacks, front yard setback, backyard setbacks that they'd have to meet, and the site is challenging. But a 40B developer could come in there and they could build, you know, they could build a lot of units. We'll just leave it at that. We think that this is a very accommodating use because it provides housing for seniors. It provides a 25% affordable component. It maximizes the site in terms of density. We're technically only asking for a zone change for 144 units. The 34 townhomes are as of right. So if you were sort of to break down the requirement of what we're looking for, you know, optically speaking, it's really not as bad as it may sound. So yes, you're saying 178 units may be a lot, but really what we're only asking for is a modification to the zoning bylaw to allow us to build 2 4-story buildings, which would include 144 units. There are other technical details that would go with the zoning modification for parking, slopes, height, et cetera. But those can, you know, we can talk about those further.
Sure.
But the general idea is 34 townhomes and 144 units in 2 4-story buildings.
So, so are these, the points in your agenda memo, Tom, I think we'll probably, you know, I think we'd like to talk about the design and maybe get feedback from folks who are here, and of course from the board members. But of these points, what did you want to talk about now? I mean, one thing I would say in terms of the point of contact, unless someone else wants to jump in, I think we will probably do that towards the end of our discussion and address that point, unless people want to talk about that now. I mean, that's a fair question. We need to work out the process. So these questions, issues here, which of these do you want to hit on now?
I think we're just looking for some general feedback in terms
Okay.
of timing. We had some conversations with Michael Herbert with regard to the process, and Michael had suggested that, you know, a 12-week process to fully vet, discuss, debate the zoning bylaw modification. So I'm just going to use just as a round date, if we were to assume that we were to kick this off, you know, let's just say May 1st, you know, we're looking at, you know, all of May, June, and July. We're in the throes of the dog days of summer. So we're frankly thinking that, you know, if we could get general support from everyone, that we would be looking at a fall town meeting. You know, there were previous discussions about special town meetings in February and March, and
Yeah.
you know, we think that frankly the best outcome for everybody would be to use time, and to use the time to give everybody
Right.
enough
Okay.
to vet it and to talk about
So
it.
it sounds like you're amenable to waiting for a fall special town meeting, which would probably be
early
We've had it in
November.
early November, we've had it in late November, so we could
That's-
say,
Yeah.
Typically what
Average
we're
mid-
talking about, a November
Yeah,
date.
I
Is that
think it was
workable?
November 18th last year.
Is that workable?
Something like
So-
that.
So
So-
I guess, just if I could, and someone should object if I think the board, if we can come to an agreement about what kind of project we like to see there, I think we think that that's a workable schedule. And that, having forums and information and meeting with the planning board and getting it to, the more you do with that before town meeting, the better. It does take a 2/3 vote to change zoning, so.
Right.
All these things are important. I think it sounds, assuming we can come to at least a basis of an agreement, that seems like a reasonable schedule.
A couple of questions. So, Tom, do you anticipate going before the planning board in a similar fashion?
Yes.
Okay.
We-
When
we
do you
do-
anticipate doing that?
We will do that immediately. I think what sort of the open question really is, who would we look to for support? Obviously, we would like to have both the planning board and the Board of Selectmen supporting us and sponsoring the zoning bylaw modification. We don't know if one is preferred over the other. Usually, planning board sponsors them, but Board of Selectmen, I
Well-
think, have to sign off on it, so.
So what we've done, and something that you were not aware of, so it wasn't on your bullet points, is we created a development liaison group
Okay,
that is comprised of a couple of Board of Selectmen, a couple of planning board members, and then others as required. So in this particular case, there would be a stormwater.
yes.
So stormwater people would be involved. I'm not sure if conservation would be involved in this, more than likely, yes. So it's our mechanism of getting everybody in the same room and having the same information and kind of, we're all speaking instead of silos,
Right.
right? So we
Working
need
together.
to insert that into this particular process. But I would suggest that happens after you make your initial presentation to the planning board, then we can start that process internally. And at the same time, I would imagine you're gonna want to, start a process with the abutters.
Yes. So I guess my question for that would be, and that's great news, because, so that we're not doing it, having 5 different meetings saying the same thing, but we can hopefully get to a consensus sooner than later. But does that sort of fall in the technical review, Mike? Is that a technical review, or is that aside from,
That's
development liaison?
yes?
No, that's separate.
Separate from
Okay.
technical review.
Check is a staff function, and the liaison group is the board and committee process.
Okay, and so are they making a final recommendation? Are they, what exactly are they?
Suggestions.
What's the end deliverable that the development liaisons provide?
Well, it could be any number of things. I mean, it's just, again, our mechanism of getting
Okay.
everybody in the same room and speaking the same language.
Yep, okay.
And so, I'm not gonna speculate what the outcome
Right,
is for this particular project at this point, but that's our process.
we would embrace that, and we'll welcome it, and we'll do it, we'll cross the Ts and dot the Is with that group of people. Whatever is necessary, we're prepared to do. My role is to interact directly with that team of development, resources, with the technical review people, with stormwater management, with DPW, with Concom, with the planning board, et cetera,
Right.
on a daily basis. So whatever we have to do, we will.
And it would also have certainly some overlap on any potential development agreement that we,
That's the next question.
right.
Yeah,
Or
sure.
another question.
Go ahead.
Michael Ussolini, President of United Group. So I just want to, the Development Liaison Group sounds like a great group. We've been in other municipalities where they brought everybody together like that to kind of socialize the project amongst the different members. But then I heard that you wanted us to meet with the planning board or the technical review. So I'm trying to understand in my mind, what is first? Is the development liaison group an initial meeting group that we get, or do we come into planning and we start with the technical review with planning on the site and the design and all of those
Well, that's-
pieces? Because the zoning is a key piece
Yeah,
before you go to planning
Yeah.
and site plan. So I don't want to put the cart before the
Right.
horse. We would very much welcome, as Tom has said, the open dialogue discussion, which we want to start right away and have going, because yes, time is on our hands, but as we all know, time moves very quickly. In the fall, we're just into spring, it's great, the weather's great, we're out of winter,
Yeah.
but before you know it, we're gonna be into the fall.
So I have a.
And there's a
Let me
lot to
just
cover and a
finish up
lot
with
to
Scherer.
do, and what we want to understand
Yeah.
is the process that you want us to follow.
Right.
We hope to be able to follow stuff in a parallel path, which would
Yeah.
be great,
Yeah, fair enough.
and we don't want to step on people's toes.
Right. So I would recommend that the first part would be going to the planning board, not in terms of permitting, but doing a similar presentation to this.
Yes.
And then we would then assemble our liaison group. You also have the opportunity at that point to start your marketing and your discussions with the abutters and so on. So that to me seems to be the initial parallel path. So we're a little bit ahead of tech review at this point, and we're ahead of, discussions of a development agreement,
Right,
right?
okay.
The only thing I want to add, though, and for the board to think about, though, what I think these folks want at some point in the process is kind of a support of this board. And so the question is, I think, what is the best route to that support or not support? Because, we're gonna have to take a position at town meeting on the zoning bylaw change, and they want to know if they have that support or not. So I guess my question would be, and this development liaison committee is a pretty new process for us. So is that the right mechanism for working out these kind of issues, such as how many units, where are the 4-story buildings, how tall are they, what do the abutters think, all that kind of stuff that we have to kind of go through and say, oh, we're gonna support this and go to town meeting and support it. So I think that's the question I would ask
Yeah.
of this board, like, what's the process for that? And I think it also gets at Tom's question, like, who should he be dealing with on a day-to-day basis for this? Who's gonna kind of shepherd this through? And if is that our response? Is that how
Yeah.
we see it working?
Well, I think that the liaison group is, the one thing we want to avoid is having the Board of Selectmen saying one thing and Planning Board saying another, right? So if we're gonna be in concert, whether we support you or don't support you, I think we need to be in concert. And, so that to me is the process at this point. And,
Yes.
So as far as who's gonna be the point person, I mean, that's, we'll have to discuss that. I mean, I don't know if we have to figure that out tonight.
Right,
But,
I guess it's just, I'm thinking about the process. So you have this liaison group, which is formed for communication, but, how are they giving it the stamp of approval or coming back to us and saying, look, we want your support. This is the way we think it should look. We want your support.
Right.
Is that how you see it?
that's how I see it, but I think it's critical that you go to the planning board as well and do
Right,
the
yeah.
exact same thing. So we agree on that.
We're fine with that, and we're just looking for direction.
Yeah.
And what I'm really looking for, we are looking for, is just the process, so that we don't get caught up like we did, and,
Right.
we'll fall on our sword, okay, from the January 16th meeting till tonight. There were a lot of moving parts and things going on, et cetera. But we are now organized. Just on a sidebar note, most of you know who Allen and Major is. Allen and Major has been retained by the Y. They're doing their site plan approval. United has retained them for Lot 2. They did the MBTA access road, good, bad, or indifferent. They know the site better than anybody else. They know it top to bottom, and it's been completely topoed, and so we just know it. And
Yeah.
so we are about to hire a well-known, one of the best-known architects in the greater Boston area, who you are all familiar with. And there are other professionals and consultants that will be on what I call the dream team, so that when you guys have questions, we have the answers, okay? And we hopefully will have anticipated those questions and have the answers before you actually ask them.
Right.
So we're prepared to do all that. The big question that we frankly have is, this costs money, okay? Engineers, architects, code consultants, lawyers, et cetera. So we're gonna be spending money, and so we know we're not getting an answer tonight. We know we're not gonna get an answer we need from the planning board, but we are looking for some tells in terms of, how far are we going down the road before we're gonna get to a point where we either have a go or a no-go. And that's something that's really important to us because
Yeah.
obviously, you know, we've got a lot of very expensive professionals on the team.
Sure.
And we'd like to make sure, and we'd like to try to ensure that we have your support because frankly, either the planning board has to sponsor us or you have to sponsor us. I mean, going out and getting, I don't know if it's 10 signatures, Mike? Citizens?
You don't want to go.
We don't
down
want
the
to do that, we don't
citizen
want to do
petition.
that. So we absolutely need the planning board, and preferably both the planning board and the Board of Selectmen's sponsor and support for this
Right.
project going forward, so.
We appreciate that, and I think, you know, we get the, you know, the time factor as well.
Yep.
Just as you need to, you know, market your product to the abutters, well, we have to listen to them as well. So
I
we need
understand.
that
Yep.
opportunity as well
Sure.
to get
Sure.
input, so.
Yes.
So, Michael, did you have something you
Yeah,
wanted?
I mean, my suggestion to, you know, minimize the excess meetings, but get as much input as possible in the process and make it as efficient as possible, is you have your liaison group actually working with, you know, neighbors and abutters in the community to kind of get an idea of what the project would look like and what the project scale looks like. Because they need to know how many units they can build, they need to know, you know, what their site costs are going to be, or have a reasonable idea of what they're gonna be before they move forward. At that point, then I say you want to work on your development agreement. So in your development agreement, you're gonna talk about things like fees, you're gonna talk about things about like affordability requirements. You need to have all of that locked up before the applicant moves forward with the planning board process. So you don't have a planning board decision that contradicts what you have in your development agreement.
Right.
So that's
And I
my
think,
best
and I think
process
we
for it.
really need to give them at least some kind of feedback for the big numbers, you know, the kind of what they're proposing. I would say, you know, as soon as it seems logical to do that.
I would
Because
agree.
we can't have them investing a lot of time and money and then in the end say, no, we don't, you know, we're not gonna approve that kind of plan. So we wanna have
Agreed.
people understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to have folks kind of
Can I just ask
yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
question?
Sure.
So, I think statutorily, we cannot go before the planning board and file a site plan application without, you know, an existing bylaw that
Sure.
complies with the development. And this is really probably more of a planning board question, but, is there a way, that we can get support to be able to run parallel paths with the planning board? We don't have a zoning bylaw that we can point to, but we clearly have a plan that we're
I think
gonna go
that's
to. And how
I
do
think
we,
that's what this.
how do we process, how
This
do we?
process, I think that's what this
Yeah,
process
that's
addresses.
what the process would do. So you couldn't technically have your planning board hearings and have noticed, you know, officially. But it would give the planning board an opportunity to provide feedback and work something out before you actually go ahead and submit that application. So it's a good use of your time, too.
Yeah, so just said a different way, if everybody, we got to a point where everybody agreed to go forward, we go to fall town meeting, whatever that may be, but it's a fall town meeting. My assumption is, at this point, is we would not be able to file an application until after we obtained approval from the town meeting?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. That's my last question.
Okay,
Michael, do
thanks.
you have any questions?
So, does it make sense, if folks want to comment or ask questions about this current plan? They're here.
Have the abutters speak first.
Well, no one's, any of the abutters want to ask? Mark, could you just let some of the abutters go first?
I'll be the quickest one,
All right, go
probably.
ahead, go
I'll be
ahead.
the quickest one, probably. Well, I know I was up here before,
Yeah,
and I saw all this, and I saw the pros and cons of the discussion we had before. It looks better, it gives more room. He explained in an updated sort of way of doing it. But I'm going to say, and I will continue, that I am gonna be for this as long as the zoning will be for, you working for. And it seems that the shape and the housing units will be needed for the seniors down the road. But I know that the others are gonna be thinking a lot differently, but with zoning will be in place and planning board and all being supported, it will get the town working together. I know behind me, it's gonna be completely different.
All right, thanks, Mark. Yes.
Hi, Peter Dana, 41 Wilbur Drive.
Peter.
I was at the initial presentation
Yeah.
meeting before this board, and at that point, I believe there were 3 key issues that were talked about. One was the way that the 4-story buildings were. At the time, they were all up against the neighborhood, and since that time, they have eliminated one of the buildings, and they have pushed another one up against the Sears development, and they left the third one where it was, okay? It's an improvement, but I still believe, and I think most of us who live on Russet Hill Road are very concerned about that building right there and how far it juts out. The second consideration was all this, can I point to this?
Sure.
May I do
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
We talked about all this open space. Well, the open space would be much better placed up here between the neighborhood and the development, instead of being down here by the MTA access road, where it's, who's gonna go there? This is Nyanza, people. Who's gonna walk those trails?
Well, there might be people, but do you guys want to address that? Why did you?
One more question.
No, sure, go ahead.
The third point, at the end, the town manager, Michael Herbert, said, please scale down the project. He said 150 units would be more appropriate for this area. Now, if you just went with the 2 buildings and we got a way to like camouflage them as efficiently as possible, you would be in the 145, 150 range, instead of having all this other stuff there. So that's those were the 3 points that I came away with. I feel like one was addressed and the other 2 were not.
Thank you. Do you guys want to respond to that? Just why you made those choices?
Sure. If you check your handouts, there's a slope evaluation page.
That's crazy.
Once again, Tom Powers from United. As I pointed out earlier, the site is 38 acres. It's approximately 1,800 feet long from the entrance of where the MBTA access road to the top of the hill, and then down the backside going toward Baldwin Circle. The property goes from 320 feet up to 385 feet, and then down to 354 feet. Okay, so it's extensive, and what we're proposing to do is basically lob off the top of the hill and use the fill from the site to create a tabletop to put the 2 larger buildings. If we were to try to do that at the lower half of the site, which you suggested, it's too expensive. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, to cut and fill and to move that soil and to get it basically get a tabletop, you're going to get a retaining wall to hold that dirt and to hold the top of the hill up, which is just basically unaffordable.
Can I ask?
Okay.
So,
Sure, go ahead.
question is, as I'm looking at your plans, and I like that you've gone to the 2 buildings,
Yes.
will you be clear cutting the lower portion, or are you gonna leave that as natural as possible?
We are gonna only cut where we have to in terms of cutting the road in and cutting, where the buildings are gonna go. So if you look at the site plan itself, there are some trees that were technically, that are dropped in there between
Yeah.
the townhomes and Area F and Apple Ridge. We walked the site tonight. We walked it from tip to tip. Okay, I'm not saying that you can't see through, but the leaves haven't even popped yet. And I understand there's winter and the leaves fall and there's night and there's the lights. I understand all that. And there's gonna be change. I understand that as well. However, there's a 100-foot buffer. There's the people's yards. There's the 100-foot buffer. We're pushing the buildings back in certain places to 154 feet and other places to 175 feet. So we're trying to create as big a distance as we potentially can. The point you're making, which is to put the buildings at the lower half where the open space is, we just can't afford to do it.
Because you would basically, if you did that, you'd have to take that top and take
You're
all that
basically
and
gonna
fill
push
in the
it.
bottom.
Or the other way is you're gonna have to inbound the fill, okay? And it's hundreds of thousands of yards of fill.
Yeah.
The current
No.
plan limits the amount of clearing and cutting to the minimum
To the minimum.
amount.
Okay.
The as-of-right development, 235 townhomes, you know, Mike said it earlier, that would clear cut basically the whole site. And going down below, you have topography and grade issues for the seniors, okay? No, though the buildings would not be all at the same elevation, you'd have cuts and fills, you'd have massive retaining walls, and you would have to clear cut more area. We will have limits to what we would cut and clear on the site plan as part of the planning board process. I would expect them, we would want them.
Right.
Right.
We personally want we want the screening as well. From our standpoint, we want the screening as
Yeah.
well.
Could
You know,
you address?
we want the trees, we want the shrubs, we want all of that there. We want the landscaping. It's a benefit to the residents and the seniors that are gonna be living there.
Do you want, while you're up there, you want to just address the number of units issue? Because is that the
It's-
economics of it?
It's it's frankly, it's an economic issue. When you sit there, I mean, I don't know what the town has access to in terms of costs, but the site work is extensive. And to cut the road in, to bring all of the utilities, the underground utilities, and to be able to get to a number that is actually affordable, you need the larger number of units. And the delta between the 144, as somebody suggested, and the 178 that we're at right now is really, it's frankly, it's gonna be an all or nothing, kind of a thing. I don't think there's really gonna be a lot of gray area in there. We really need to do the 178
So
units.
that's your bottom line.
Honestly, yes.
Yes, it is, and there's a demand for it in the town.
Tom, I just have a question, because you just, you said something that made a lot of sense when you're talking about the economics of this. I guess my question to you would be, is that if you were to push that project down further, you're minimizing the amount of road that you're gonna have to develop and build. So you're gonna actually be saving some money that way if you do that.
The steepness of the hill is so great that to do the cut and fill, and we're gonna have to inbound fill, we're gonna have to bring fill in, hundreds of thousands of yards of fill. And to bring it in, it's economically unfeasible.
Even if you made the road smaller?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to see the figures, because I'm a doubting Thomas. I just need to see figures.
I can tell you that the costs for the road for Campanelli were staggering, and we are building less than half of what they are building. And our road length is gonna be extensive. We get into it, we'll talk about it, but I can't give you those numbers today, but they are significant.
This is my question, I don't know, Michael, or, do you know, if they were to, if it was be developed for townhomes, would that change the kind of topography? Would they be able to develop the lower half as townhomes? Do we know that?
Well,
Wouldn't the whole lot be full based on what they?
Well, that's
can
what
do?
I'm
so
wondering.
the zoning allows for the whole lot to be full, but, the key here is the deed restriction on the property, where we have up to 24 acres being given back to the town as open space.
Right.
So, from a zoning perspective, you'd be able to do that. From a legal perspective, you wouldn't necessarily be able to do that.
Right, but we did that because we were looking at changing the zoning, right? I
Correct.
mean, it's one of those things that it sort of catches up to each other, right?
Right.
So we said we would look at changing the zoning so that it would be more compact, so that we would have the open space, and that's why the deed restriction got put on.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
And just as a different point, and this is just if we were to walk away, the town has a 4.5% affordable housing threshold today. Okay, I haven't checked the housing production plan to see what other, I think there's another 40B or
I
two
think
that might be.
we're
in the-
aware of that,
Yeah.
that's why we're
Yeah,
considering this,
so the 25% affordable, the seniors, the open space, the no demand on the public school system, the
We
tax
get it,
revenue.
yeah,
So,
we.
question in regards to the affordable units, will all of them, will
be
those
counted
just be the rental, the apartments? Or will that also be the will the townhomes also be rental units?
They will be equally distributed.
Okay, so a certain
Across the
percentage
portfolio.
of the the apartments and a percentage of the townhomes will be affordable.
So I just want to go.
Yes, that's correct, and I think by statute that it's required.
Okay.
All right, Michael, just so to finish your thought on the I just want to think about the alternatives. So in terms of the townhome, as per current zoning, what would we likely end up with, do you think?
I can't give you a number, Rob, just simply because, you know, it varies on how much acreage we're talking about in terms of open space. It varies on the size of the units. You know, there's a couple of other factors that could go into play.
But when you say 265 units.
252.
252, that's the maximum.
That-
Would likely be less than that. I
Well,
would
you know what,
think.
I'd like to, Tom, do you know what the density requirements?
10 units per acre.
10 units per an acre. So in actuality, you're probably, if you're looking at 24 acres, so subtract 24 from 38, you're at 14 acres at 10 units. So you're probably maximum 140 units under the existing zone.
Townhomes,
And this is,
because of this.
yeah, and this is
development
back of the envelope math, so I
Right,
don't
but
wanna.
because of our development agreement, we've already kind of limited that development, okay. So, sir, I just see, do you have a question or another, do you want to say something? Yeah, come on up.
Please. Paul Wilkinson. Paul Wilkinson, 16 Russet Hill Road.
Paul.
I guess I'll start with a question. Michael, maybe to you. I've heard tonight, well, on their plan, they have 20 acres of open space, and I thought the agreement was 24. I think I heard you tonight even say 24. They used a range of 20 to 24, or someone did, so what is the right answer there?
The deed restriction does say 20 to 24, that,
Okay.
so the town would have to agree to it.
Yeah, it would be nice if they would kind of look to the upper end of that range and not right at the minimum.
I think it's one of those things where it gives the board the flexibility. Let's just say they were able to move it to the bottom, right? But they would
Right.
only be able to give 20 acres at that point. You might want to have that as opposed to, you know, having it up on the top and then having 24 acres. So-
Sure. Next comment or point is, I believe there's a maybe roughly 17-acre development area that they put up on the Scherer side of the development, just to the right of the apartment building. And I guess, what is the point of the future development area, and why isn't it a current development area right now, to be able to push things back?
I'm not sure what it's.
This area up in here, was that labeled?
No, what you see is what you get,
Yeah.
is essentially what I'm saying. So you have 178 units, and that is all that would ever be built on the site.
So why wouldn't we use this area up here,
It's all topo. It's all,
even for the townhomes?
yeah. The short answer is yeah. The grades are too steep, and it's just, you know, what you're seeing on the plan now, you know, it still has to be tweaked, but we're trying to maximize the site in terms of the number of units and work with the grades.
Look at the grades. I mean,
So I
Yes.
get your comments on the topo and the cost, but this is gonna be a revenue stream for years and years to come. I'm not really feeling bad for them in terms of having to do some cut and fills to be able to make it work for the residents of Ashland and the abutters. Another comment is just overall, the footprint is way too big, aside from the number of units. But if you look at the configuration of the two buildings, sort of in an L shape, and then the huge quad area in the middle, where they have a dog park, and it looks like a garden, and the community center, and God knows what else they have in there, surrounded by a road all the way around. It just takes up a huge footprint, and I think it's a lot bigger footprint than the board had contemplated at the town meeting last time when they talked about this and pitched it. It's just a much bigger project than you know, we've kind of talked about with the town. And I think if I was gonna give comments, it would be, I get the screening effect maybe of the townhomes closer to the Russet Hillside, but I'd prefer trees there. And I'd prefer that those buildings were pushed back more, made a little bit smaller, and the quad made a lot smaller, with those townhomes either not being there or being relocated, such that you can push everything, as Peter said earlier, away from the residents. It can definitely happen. You just gotta make this project a little bit smaller to make that work. I've walked the site, I live right there. I've walked the site a number of times, and I'm sure, I know, Michael, you have, and sure some of the board has, and you've probably seen there's an ancient, well, I don't know, ancient, but there's a stone wall that bisects the whole property I don't know the significance of that stone wall, when it was put there, was it a Magunko Indian stone wall or whatever, is it protected? But it has to be taken into consideration, because as they currently have it designed, the length of that building is so long, it's gonna run right over the top of that stone wall. So we need to take that into consideration, as well as there's wetlands that run out along that stone wall on the Russet Hill side and run all the way back to the corner of Russet Hill, sort of near, up to the corner. And, you know, so conservation would certainly need to be in. They should be involved early on in this discussion, and whether they can even build there. Because, you know, if they can't, then we're wasting everybody's time, right?
Okay.
I guess my last point is, in terms of the participation and getting feedback from the residents, we tried to do that months ago. Right when they were here the last time, we had offered to meet on a Saturday or a night, whatever it was, and get feedback so we could come to the next meeting here and have something good to talk about. And we got no response. So I don't know if I want to spend a lot of time giving more advice and more discussions, because they haven't been open to that previously, and, you know, I'm going to be a no vote, so that's my
Okay.
comment.
Thank you. Peter?
Michael.
Should have Michael's.
Thank you. Peter Fogerin.
Yeah, let's let Peter talk, and then we
Oh,
can.
I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
Yeah, go
Russet
ahead,
Hill
Peter.
Road, I want to say I'm like a 33-year Ashland resident. You know, the original town meeting where we approved the apartments, the rail transit district, was really hotly discussed. I think it was a very close vote. And it was a big thing for us to give up, to allow all those big apartments and change the character of the town. And I think we knew going into this what this meant: two-story townhouses coming up, 55 plus. But yet, here we are again, you know, they're changing the rules of the game. A four-story building in a residential neighborhood, I don't know how tall that is, but it's out of character. And so I think the idea of seeing what the townhouses would look like on the property versus these four-story buildings, to me, it's all about the height. It doesn't belong in a neighborhood. And that's the reason why you have zoning. People make big investments in their houses. You live there all your life. You count on the zoning as part of, this is what I know it's gonna be there. And yet we allow them to change the rules, not just a little bit, a lot. So the idea of having a four-story building in your backyard, a commercial building, it doesn't make any sense to me, and I think you have to consider that. I don't know what else to say. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's out of character with the neighborhood. If you go up High Street, you see what a four-story building looks like. And what we did to those poor people who have that building in their backyard is unreal.
All right, thanks, Peter. Yes, sir.
David Crumholtz, 20 Rusted Hill Road. I'm not a good speaker, but I'm going to give it my best. Number of things. The area originally, as we all know, before the zoning change, that most of Lot 2 was residential A. And part of the discussion and part of the agreement, I think, perhaps for the approval, I'm not sure, was the fact that we'd have the townhouses, two-story buildings in that section, and the buffer. Since then, you end up with some creep. 2 stories turned into, by the time the zoning came out, 2 in the front and 3 in the back if the landscaping permits, if the slope permits. I'm not sure what happened with with all of the apartments at the Campanelli site, but I think those ended up with a differential front to back also. I'm not positive on that. In the 4 stories you're proposing now, is that 4 in the front and 5 in the back if the permits?
4. 2 4-story
Okay.
buildings.
One of the other things I think that happened with the Campanelli is one of the people on Baldwin Circle mentioned, and I don't know for a fact, that he thought that some of the apartments were ended up being not taller, the elevation being higher than originally proposed. Perhaps a change, I think, from the blasting to another method. I'm not positive on that. So something to consider. The other thing that bothers me is, and maybe you can correct me, I don't believe there's any restriction in story height or roof height. So that's an open issue. The roof height is driven by the size of the building and the slope they want for the roof. I took a look at the Campanelli elevations that they showed. And I think if I bumped it up another story, it's about almost 2.5 times almost 2 times the height of my house. So I'm concerned about creep and as the development occurs. The other thing I'm a little bit concerned about, I read through some of the apartment notes for the RTD apartments, for the Campanelli apartments. And I saw a number of things back and forth with the reviewers and the builder, bringing up issues about this isn't to town standards. And they said, well, this isn't a town road, and this isn't to town standards. Well, this isn't a town this, or this isn't a town that. So there seemed to be, I will call it creep or lack of meeting all the town standards in some of the things. And I'm concerned about that also. I also don't like the height. Over the last 15 years, I've had personal experience with elder care issues and with age-restricted housing. I personally prefer a 1 or 2 story type structure with car access directly into the building, being able to walk into the building from the car, from the garage, with minimal steps, or none preferably. As the population ages, people in these facilities age, or facilities in these residences age, you end up dealing with medical issues, knees, hips, aging in general. I personally think there should be more built with wheelchair accessibility throughout the area. Just my personal experiences. I would ask a question, and maybe I've heard the answer indirectly. A year ago, the landowner submitted a plan that called for, up in the same area, 132 units in looks like 4, 5, 6, and 7 unit combinations with housing or with some extra parking and at least a 1-car garage for each one. The units, I thought the layout was similar to what I was familiar with in another area from my experience. I thought it could use a little bit more parking. I wasn't sure how dense it really was, but I know comparing it to, for example, Cookingham Green, those are 2 units. Those units have 2-car garages, more space. There's more space between them. I understand that. One other comment I want to make, but I can't think of it. Was that plan from last year then not achievable? The one that was withdrawn last year in the fall?
Is that Gainer's,
Yeah, I believe that was a preliminary subdivision plan, and so that was filed generally to maintain the zoning in place. I don't think the owner at that time had
That was Gaynor.
Yeah,
So
the
he
Gaynor.
has to put
Yeah,
something
Bob
in to
Gaynor, the
maintain.
landowner.
Right, so I was here at the town meeting when he withdrew that because it was related to some monies owed the town that he wasn't sure about. He was going ahead at that time, and there's a lot of work that was put into those plans. Maybe they were all preliminary. I'm not sure where they were in the planning stage.
Yeah, they were in the very nascent stages. Mr. Gaynor was also going through the planning board process with the solar farm on the cap.
Mhm.
And that's where a lot of the discussions about the monies owed came into the discussion. But are you saying that you like that plan better than a plan that might have some taller buildings, and let's just say not necessarily in this configuration, but maybe further away from the neighborhood? Are you saying you like the townhome plan that goes across everything better?
Personally, yes. I have not dealt with elder care issues and aging individuals in a multi-story unit where you've got parking away from it, where you have to walk across from a parking area into the building, in the rain, the snow, and how that goes with the population you say you want to target. I know you've referred to active elders, but from what I've seen, these over 55 groups will merge and migrate to over 75 and over 85 is the average age.
Are you suggesting that senior citizens can't live in large buildings? I mean, I'm just, I don't know, do you guys want to, the developers want to address that?
I'm not at all. I'm just saying, these are some of the things that I've seen personally
Sure.
over the last 15 years in dealing with aging adults.
Yeah.
I know now, as time goes on, hearing goes down.
Yeah, I
people
guess
with
I
hearing
would just
aids,
suggest that there's,
Right.
large buildings have other advantages that
I
townhomes
understand.
may not have for
Sound goes
elderly.
up. It also depends on how well the building is built from a soundproofing standpoint. That's it. Thank you.
Okay,
Can
thank
I,
you.
can I
Yeah,
make just
sure.
one comment, because of that, Dave, I believe, is it Dave? Yes, brought up, and that's the difference between story and height, actual height. We refer to everything as stories, and I think that's just the wrong way to go now. I'll give you an example. The Campanelli apartments, those are, the 3-story ones actually have the top of the roof, I believe, is close to 50 feet. I believe the UGC product that is 4 stories, if I remember, Bill, at the last meeting, we talked
Oh, yeah.
about the tip being at 32 feet. I could be wrong, or maybe it was, maybe it had to be over the 40 level. But you could actually have a 4-story building that's shorter than the Campanelli 3-story buildings.
Right.
But
okay.
we got to start changing the vernacular and start talking
Talk
about
about
it in terms of
height.
feet.
Yeah, I think one of the
Good
things we
idea.
talked about, the ability to have perspective or visual, Jim, did you,
Yes, I just wanted to add something to your thought process as you develop your planning process. Let us not forget that there are children that'll be moving into this development along with the adults. And we,
well, it's supposed to be over 55, so what's
Actually,
your?
it's over 62.
well, yeah, I know that. That also was gonna happen in the legacy farms. And in the growing up process, that didn't happen. And they allowed it to occur by simply changing the regulations. And now, that's, of course, a large sum of money that the town is gonna be paying. I don't suspect it is going to be here, but it must be considered. And that's all I'm suggesting that you do. And when you go to Legacy Farms, you'll find out that it wasn't even thought of because the buildings were too small. And it
Okay,
turned
but
out
this is,
it didn't work that way.
this would be more
62.
controlled.
And based on their business model, it's over 62.
Actually, I have a question
Sure, go
for
ahead.
Michael.
Yeah.
You mentioned the making an offer to a new planner. What do you anticipate the time frame to be?
May 13th.
Okay.
May 13th?
May 13th.
Very good. Good question. Yes, sir.
Hi, Tom Chelina from 33 Wilbur. So, when I look at the Campanelli ones, these homes are real,
Could please, people,
it's
quiet
really,
down,
really tall.
please?
So I'm not sure what the developers are thinking of, what the grade is from Russell. When we look at that area, how tall is the grade before you start building upon the grade? Do you guys know yet, or is the engineering hasn't been done?
I think the average is gonna start at around 354 feet.
So 354, already on top, they're gonna build 4 stories.
I would say the engineering has not been done to that
Yeah.
level, all right?
You guys
So-
may want to come to the microphone because
We are looking at
television
at
can't
a
hear
very
you.
tall,
So the question was about a
Very
line
tall
of sight and the grade, and that engineering has not been done to the point of cuts,
The actual
fills,
cuts.
exact measurements and numbers. Again, Tom spoke to the fact about
Yeah.
process and support, and so that
Okay.
hasn't been done.
All right,
so
thank you.
we're, the people on Apple Ridge are very, very close to this project now. So when I come out of my house, I don't wanna see, 30 feet of, building above my tree line. It's not aesthetically pleasable. I mean, if we went to sell our houses, what's that over there, you know? Stuff like that, so it should be consideration.
Okay.
And also, I also think that wildlife has to get involved, because there are a lot of creatures around there. Coyotes in that area, there's a big population. So I think wildlife and what's the runoff, I don't know what, you know, all that stuff has to be handled. But my thing is the height,
Okay,
all right?
thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Tom.
Yes, Tom?
Tom Powers from United. I guess, first of all, I'll fall on my sword, and I will apologize for not following up and not inviting anybody and everybody out to the site to walk it. I'd be happy to do that, and we can coordinate through the town, through the new team, to do that sooner than later. Once again, I walked the site tonight, probably around 6 o'clock. And I would like to do it sooner than later, frankly, because the leaves haven't popped. And I would like to get as many people out there from Apple Ridge and walk the property line, walk the buffer line, walk the stone wall and the wetlands, and we can all agree or disagree on what the sight lines look like, and we can probably do it at dusk so that you can see the lights coming on over at Campanelli. But frankly, this is my own personal opinion, but you're going to get 6 months with no leaves and 6 months with leaves.
Tom, would you be willing to do a balloon test?
Yes, we would.
Well, that sounds like a good.
I'm not sure what that means or what the definition of that is, but
It's using a balloon to show the height, so that people have a visual idea of what that building would
that
look
would
like.
be that would be a
height-wise.
green balloon, right? I'm kidding.
It's gonna have to be a big one.
So, Joe, that can be done when the engineering's done.
Okay,
'Cause
no,
when
that's
the cuts
fine,
and
but
fills
I-
are done, but we're not gonna put a balloon out at a 4-story if we're cutting the hill down, and we're gonna drop the hill 10
But you could
feet.
do it saying, okay, we're
Right.
at this height on the hill.
I'm just
and-
saying, there's no way that will be able to be done right away.
Okay.
But you
Because
could-
we haven't done all the engineering and the cuts and fills. And to
I
put
understand that, but if
we've
there's
done
a-
balloon tests before in other projects like this
Mm-hmm.
because of the line of sight and the visual. And so I have no problem doing that. I'm familiar with it. We've done it before.
Okay.
But it needs to be done so that the buildings are, the design of the building is finalized, the height of the building's finalized, and the exact grades and cuts and fills and the tightness of the site plan and where the buildings are gonna be placed on the site plan. I think there's an easement through there that we gotta work
So-
with.
so here's
There's some other things that
So
we
just,
have to
just
we
the
have to
the
work
issue
through.
with doing it later in the process is that everything's pretty much in place and you spent a lot of money, and if people look at the balloon and there's a problem,
I think
then-
this goes back to the support of the board and the town and moving forward. and the
Right,
cart
so if we
before the
wanna
horse.
see the balloon ourselves, we wanna do it early in the process, right? So that's, I think, the issue here.
And I don't think we're saying it needs to be
Exact.
exact, but based on the topography, which you've talked about, and the fact that you're gonna have to cut some of it. So if your topography is 10 feet above where you think you're gonna be, then.
Which building do you want the balloon test on?
I think
They're
the
the
one.
same, they're the same height, they'll be
I
at the
think
Well, the
same.
one-
I think
That
the
land
one-
will be at the same, elevation.
I think the one closest to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Is the concern.
The one that jets out towards the neighborhood,
The
probably.
the
Mike.
one whose width of the building, the narrow part of the building is facing the neighbors.
Right.
Correct.
And
I
what
would
is that,
think
that?
Okay.
I think that
And
would be.
I have one other question, quick question, and I asked this to all the developers. Ashland is known for people coming in, building, and then turning around and leaving us behind. So I would like to know, what is the future goals, or what is your future plans with respect to this project as it pertains to, are you folks gonna be the owners, or in 3 to 4 years you turn around and sell it? It's kind of important for us to know that.
Okay, so our company's in the business of developing and building senior housing. We've done a number of projects. We've owned some of them for 30 years, all right?
Okay.
We've owned them that long. We are a full-service company. We do the development, the financing, the construction management, and the property management. We manage all the product to the point about age restriction and seniors and 55 plus, we expect a covenant, a deed covenant that does all that covers all that as part of the development agreement or whatever. We want it as well. We're in the business of developing and doing senior housing, and so we want it. That's why we're here. We have the buildings the way they're positioned with the clubhouse and the amenity area and the townhomes because we want everybody to be able to engage in the clubhouse and the lifestyle program and the sun program that we talked about back in January. It's not just about providing shelter for the seniors. There's a lot of people in the Apple Ridge neighborhood who have moms and dads that either live in the area or they don't live in the area. They can move them into this community. It could be a big benefit to them.
While you're there, so you had one objection to the amount of space in the interior. What's your thinking on that? And did you understand the objection there?
I'm
He
sorry
thought,
about
this person thought you could move
The
the buildings.
courtyard,
Yeah,
again.
the courtyard, the size of it.
That
He
is
thought you could
something that
move
we
the
will look
buildings
at
in.
as to how we can tighten that up. You know, again, if we can further limit the clearing and the cutting and tighten it up, we can. At the same time, we don't want, if you're living in that apartment, you don't want to be looking in your neighbor's apartment. That's not fair to the people that are living there either.
Okay. And how about the objection about large buildings and aging populations?
There's a huge benefit to having the seniors together in one building in the community. There's a lot of synergy. They look out for each other. You're going to have couples living in this building. You're going to have widows living in here. And we do most of our buildings and our active adult that are in this size, 72, 74 units. We did one building that was pretty big in the town of Colony. To my opinion, it was too big, but it's been successful. It's been 100% occupied for 20 years. It was a 249 unit building, but it was in an urban core. It was a little tighter site.
Sure.
We have stuff that we've done in Florida where the buildings are 80 units, and they're over parking. So we find a huge benefit. We also feel that the townhomes mixed in are going to help transition, bring the average age here is probably going to be the early 70s, 70, 72 by the time it's all done. You're going to have a little older population living in the garden building, the 4-story, and probably a younger population living in the townhomes. We have people living in our communities that are 55, 60, 70, and even in their early 80s, because we have that sun program and that lifestyle program and that continuum.
Okay.
And they
Thank you.
they don't have to pay for things. They don't have to pay an entrance fee. They don't have to pay for things that they don't need, and it's a great product. And frankly, there's a lot of towns in the state of Massachusetts that don't have this kind of product, and it's needed.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just, if I may, 6 months ago, Michael championed this project and was, came to us and was talking about this project. And I would just like to ask Michael, I'm not trying to put him on the hot seat or in the spotlight here, but what's your take on this?
Not putting me on the hot seat, huh?
That's why I sit next to you.
So, I think one thing I just want to address is the lack of communication after the January meeting. I think Tom fell on his sword on that a little bit. I think I, bear a little bit of responsibility there. We were trying to organize things and things just fizzled out. The other thing I want to say is I really love this product in terms of what they offer seniors. It's something that we desperately need. We need affordability. We need affordable units for seniors. We need to boost our affordable housing inventory, not just from the moral standpoint of that we have to provide that product for our seniors, but we also need to, what I call, immunize ourselves from 40B developments in other locations throughout town. That being said, I said it at the last meeting, I'll say it at this meeting, it's just too big. I thought that, at 140, 150 units, I thought that was going to be tough to achieve the 3 goals that we articulated at the very beginning, which was to provide that affordable housing, keep open space, as much open space as possible, and then protect the neighborhoods. I think we accomplished 1.5 with this. I think we kind of miss out on the open space, and I think we miss out on the protecting the neighborhoods. I feel like you're gonna have to shrink it down to get something that really achieves all those goals. And I do think to the extent that you can move it closer towards the road, and off that site that's been undisturbed is going to be what is going to resonate with the rest of the community. Those are my general thoughts.
But what about the steepness of the grade in the front?
You know, engineering is engineering, and it's an expense, and I'm sure that's something that, you know, we can always talk. We've talked about ways that we can, as a community, mitigate expenses borne by the developer to get a better project for the community. And I think, you know, we should have that discussion as part of the
Liaison.
liaison group.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Just a recommendation, if you're gonna walk the site, I'm very sensitive to poison ivy, and I've gotten poison ivy in there in the middle of winter. I don't know if it's still that bad, but I'd say make sure people recommend you wear long pants and hiking boots or something like that if you're gonna be going through there.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you.
Not to mention the ticks.
Mark? So,
So
I did, should we be asking,
Okay.
778, that's 24.
Michael, I just want to,
Compromised, 66.
you know, they mentioned the economics of the 179 units. Are you folks, is it feasible for you to share that analysis with us? Or is that something we'd be interested in seeing?
I mean, I
Because
think,
you're saying they should cut it down, and they're saying they can't afford to.
well, you know, I think us being the arbiters of that is, I don't think that's gonna work.
You know,
I mean, it's up
They-
for the company to decide what is financially feasible
So-
for them.
I mean,
Okay.
they're coming in here and they're trying to work with us, but they're still a business. They're still, you know, they still need to be able to afford what they do, and they still.
Well, how do we know that what we're asking for is reasonable? What you're asking for, how do you know that's reasonable? He said tonight it's not.
Well, like I said, I just have to go back to, again, the three goals that we put forward as part of this project. I don't know, can you make the units smaller, like the individual units smaller, and that thereby shrink the footprint? And then, you know, you have a smaller project, but you still have the number of units. You know, I don't know, and again, that comes to the point where, you know, is there something that we can do, whether it's with fees or with, you know, affordable housing, money, housing choice grants, things of that nature, to make, again, find that balance between what is feasible for them and what's a good
So
product
the
for the community.
analysis would be important for that sort of process. If we were to promise public funds to help do this, we'd want to know how the numbers work out. Yes, Mark?
Okay. Been going on for a little while, so I'm gonna ask the question through the chairman, through the boards.
Yes.
Is this gonna be taken fully and formulated, discussed, and not say in an executive session what we really feel?
Say that again?
Is this not gonna be kept down underneath? Will it be kept in
Can't take
public
this to executive
through the
session.
boards?
Yeah,
And since there's no liaison group yet, the planning board would be this, probably.
Well, there is a group, Mark. We've appointed
Yeah.
the group.
And
So
there's
they
no-
would start meeting.
yeah, and there's nothing here that we're discussing that would qualify for an executive session, so.
Okay, want to make sure about that because it has happened before.
Mm.
And I'm not aiming at that. I'm not aiming at that.
Okay,
Comments?
I'm just making sure that everybody gets heard, from developer to abutters, and a person like me that does not live in the area, but is for it, to understand that, to the one comment about the person said for 15 years of medical issues with elders. I live with that now, and this won't have a change in it, but it also will not be a detriment, with an aging process they have to go somewhere, and they're not gonna be herded like animals.
All right,
They're being respected.
good point, Mark, thank you. Yes.
I'm Jeff Thurber at 32 Wilbur Drive. So I
Jeff.
just have a couple questions. I know you haven't done the engineering, but you're saying that I'm going to step over here.
Sure.
Well, we need you by the microphone so we can hear you into the public.
Yeah, you
watching.
just speak into the microphone as you do it, Jeff. That's fine.
Okay.
There you go.
So bring the structures down here, you're saying is too expensive because you have to fill this grade up. Is that, that's?
Cut and fill, you have to basically create a tabletop.
How much of this hill, how much are you lopping off there? Because it looks like, if I look at this profile.
The topography is such that the topo lines are so tight in the lower part that the cuts and fills would not allow for the development to occur.
How much of that top are you lopping off?
That's the final, when they were asking for the balloon study, that's the complete engineering analysis that has not been engaged, has not been finished with Allen and Major. It's part of their scope. We're going through that process right now, but it's not done.
So how can you really evaluate
I
cost?
can evaluate that because we do a lot of these developments, and I know that that's not physically feasible. And if this becomes
What, to bring that material down?
If this becomes to the point where we get pushed down to the hill, we won't do the transaction. We don't need to talk about it anymore.
No, because I look at these structures here for the Campanelli site, and they were able to build these structures down at that lower
And they
grade.
clear-cutted a whole bunch of land doing that.
But aren't you gonna have to clear cut that knob anyways, just to kind of get this
Not
to be
nearly,
level?
not nearly as much. That's what I said earlier.
All right, I just don't know how you can develop the cost if you haven't done a little bit of engineering. And then my other thought, is there any possible way that the road can come up this way and the structures be over to that side and further away from the neighborhood?
So the site plan is not final. Everybody here is looking at that site plan as if it's final, and it's not. All right, and what it is, today's session was all about a process to get to a town meeting for a vote in zoning and an engaging of the neighbors. Okay?
Well, my point would be
Speaking with the neighbors.
If you
Now,
can push them that way a little bit and down a little bit,
And
I think that would be more palatable.
that comment will be noted and is valid. We heard comments in January. I'm not gonna speak to
guy's
this
named Mike,
meeting to
right?
get together with the neighbors, because nobody called me, and, I don't know that happened. All right, so I don't know where that fell down. It fell apart. It didn't happen. Here we are at the end of April. We're not going to a May 1 town meeting for a zoning change, and we're looking to do it in the fall. We're not asking for a special meeting. We're asking to work with the neighbors to kind of go through this process. So that comment will also be taken into account.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so where does this leave us, folks? So, I don't wanna, I don't wanna string these folks along if we don't think we can come to some sort of agreement. What's the sense of the board
Expecting an
here?
agreement tonight?
No.
Okay.
Yes, I am, Joe, and you're gonna, no, just kidding. No, I'm just trying to, but I think.
You may be disappointed.
Yeah, right.
So I think we did start to lay out at least the beginning of a process
Right.
here. And again, we talked about, the need to incorporate into the memo that was provided, the liaison development group. So, again, I think if we agree the process to be a presentation to the planning board, similar to this, we assemble the liaison group. I asked you about the planner starting, we're talking about May. It would seem like the dates are going to coincide to have the planner kind of be a point person here.
Hopefully he's not watching this meeting, so.
Because he may change his
He might not
mind.
start,
So I think, to me, I'm not sure when the next planning board meeting is. I know they're probably not scheduled till after our town meeting
So
at
I
this
believe they're
point.
gonna meet on the 25th.
They are gonna meet on the
I don't know
25th,
what they
okay.
have on the agenda.
All right,
April.
of April.
So, Michael, do you think are you gonna be able to participate directly in these discussions, or how do you see that working out?
I don't necessarily think I should be the liaison, like
Oh, you
the
saw that
point
one
person.
coming, yeah.
For
Because it needs some
reasons
kind of.
we've talked about
yeah.
in the past, but, I mean, I'm happy to participate, and I think I probably would need to participate in the
I think so
development.
too, and I think we need to get the
Yeah.
planner engaged in this as well, so,
And the reason, I bring that, because we've got some kind of big issues here. The abutters really don't like the height and where the buildings are located, but it seems difficult to move that. We've got issues about how many units that we're not agreed on. So I guess my question in terms of, well, one of the things I'd like to see is, I think one is the alternative development scenario. Because I think we should know what we're likely to get if we don't do this. So I think that's important in terms of how many units and what it would, I think it'd be good for the abutters to know as well. Like, are we gonna see how many townhomes, where would they likely be located, what would that be like? And I think that's gonna be an important, discussion item at town meeting, I'm sure. So if we don't do it now, it'll end up being discussed then. So I think that would be a key part of this whole discussion. And I think we gotta figure out how to at least come to some basic agreement before these guys go too far and spend too much money about, how many units, how big are these buildings, where generally are they gonna be located? And I think we have to figure out how that process is gonna work. And your discussion about perhaps helping the development as we as a town think it's a good public policy, that we need to think about how that would work.
I do think, based on what I heard tonight from the company, I think one of the things you have to decide is whether or not you feel like you could there's a viable development that can happen on that top end of the site with a 4-story, with a certain height.
Certain height building.
Don't want to necessarily say 4-story, but it will be a 4-story building.
Right, but
hopefully.
as you said, a 4-story building could be 30
It
feet,
could
or
be
it could
30
be
feet.
50 feet. And I think, depending on what the topography is and what they engineer, that would change what the look is.
It could. So I think you need to decide, as a board, if you think that's viable, then kind of we move forward, because that seems to be the sticking.
Yes.
The sticking.
Well,
point.
as Peter said, they bought their houses with an idea that this was the zoning, and so now we're changing that, so that's a legitimate point. The question is what.
The town meeting would be changing.
Yeah,
I
well,
think that's a key.
but it's not going anywhere without our support, right? So we have to decide if it's something we support.
And I want to get input from the zoning board and the planning board with respect to this. We're not experts, we're not engineers. We take the word of, one group. I want to make sure that we get all the information so that we can make a very conscious and viable decision, not for just us and not for the developer, for the residents that are butters as well. So.
Right.
well, I think,
How do we do
I
it?
think,
How do we do
I
that?
think we owe, at this point, we owe an answer to at least the next steps, right? So I would suggest that their next step is to make an appointment with the planning board,
Just
the same process, and then we can assemble
The liaison.
our group, and at the same time, you're obviously gonna participate. We get our new town planner engaged, and then we come back and we discuss that.
All right, and I'd like to see the alternative, and that's because I think we need to know what we're comparing this with.
Yeah, I'll do the best I can with
Yeah,
it.
but realizing
Just
it's not a
considering there's
finished
some
thing.
variables
Yeah. Right.
that are just tough to kind of articulate,
Yeah.
which is where that open space is going to be.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Tom.
Just one last comment with regard to falling on my sword. I will tell you that I will be absolutely 100% available to whomever to get this project moving, whether it's day or night. I'll hand out my cell phone number, and people can call me, residents, neighbors, Apple Ridge folks.
Okay.
And I'll come out and meet with them. But that's number one. Number two, we have a couple of alternatives, and when I first came here tonight, and I said this to Michael, begin with the end in mind. So if anybody's a Stephen Covey advocate, I really wanted to look at what's our objective when we walk out the room, and it was not really to be focusing on the site plan, because that is just a site plan. Okay, it's really the process of how do we get to the final end result that's acceptable to the entire town, the community, and United. And that's really what I'm gonna be doing, is I'm gonna be that process functionary person to do that. So, that's the plan today. It's changed from the first plan. I'm sure what I could probably tell you is that that will not get built, okay? There's some revision, some modification to it. There's a tremendous amount of work that's gonna have to go into it, a tremendous amount of money that's gonna have to be spent, and we're willing to do that. We just wanna make sure that we have a team that's willing to work with us to get to that end result, if we can get there.
I will say Tom's
Okay,
a worker.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
He's a And we can't, I think some of us have walked that site. I have numerous times.
I'd like to walk it with you.
Well, I think
I would
we
like to
should
walk it
all
with
have an
you.
opportunity. I mean, we can't mandate, certainly the neighborhoods to, but I would imagine they'd be receptive to,
So it sounds like as this process is going forward, we should have that site walk that you're talking about, and how do you feel about, how do we organize that? Like, they should just announce, I'm not looking at you.
Yeah,
So-
we'll, I mean, whatever, if it's better to do it on a weekend versus a weekday,
Yes.
I'll work it out with whoever, and we'll.
Well, do you have contact information for these folks? How do you do that?
I like a balloon watch.
Balloon watch?
Well, that would be helpful.
Well, I think
The
that-
sooner the
but I
better,
think-
that's what I
But I
think.
think we want to make sure that if they're going to do that, that it's accurate for their perspective as well as yours.
Right.
Because if all of a sudden it's not, they don't have at least initial engineering, and all of a sudden where you're complaining as neighborhoods because it's too tall, well, maybe it's not really that tall. So, well, again,
Maybe
part of the
that's the
engineering
sidewalk.
that they need to. Right,
Well, height.
Yeah.
I don't know what your height is.
I don't think we're prepared to answer that
Right.
question right now, to be honest. I mean, because buildings, I'll tell you the answer, okay? It's code. A lot of it has to do with building code, okay? And you have ceiling heights, okay? And I'm not sure today, as I stand here, if the building code in Ashland is 8 feet, for ceiling heights. You have mechanicals, HVAC systems, heat systems, et cetera. I don't know if any of that stuff can get run in the walls, has to be run in the ceilings. Okay, I don't know the height and the pitch of the roof, so you're asking me to.
Well, so is it time now to do this site visit or not?
Let me ask you a question. Do you know, Mike, how they measure the height of a building in the town building code? Is it the average mean around the grade? Do you know how it is?
I do not know. I
Okay.
can get that.
All right, if you can
Great.
get that to us, we can tell you what the
Okay.
height of the 4-story would be.
Sounds good.
Okay? I think it's about 42, 44 feet, but it depends upon how
Alright.
you measure.
Right.
Different building codes in different towns and cities measure building height differently, and that's kind of what Tom's referring to.
Okay.
And do you go to the mean grade of around the pitch of the roof? There's a specific code, and
All right.
if we get it, we'll be able to get, if you can get us that, or we can pull it off your site, we'll give you the
Great.
height.
Okay.
All right, and how do we organize this site visit then? How are we, logistically, what's the best way of doing it with both the board and the neighbors?
I would say Tom's are the developer's contact. If the neighborhood can have one contact, that would be
To
helpful.
let people know.
And if the town has one contact, then between the three, you'd share an email, and then you could do it that way.
Okay.
Does that work for the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Who wants to be the neighborhood contact?
So you could,
Peter.
Peter?
so you could
And
email.
Peter, your
looking
last
at you,
name
so
is
it's gotta be you.
Dana, D-A-N-A?
So,
Okay.
Peter, you should email the Board of Selectmen with, the contact or however you want
And then
Want
we
that
will
to work.
forward it on to
Yeah.
you guys.
Does that work?
So we'll get this organized, yeah, okay, great. All right, is that enough for tonight,
Think so.
everybody?
we good?
I think so. I think we're
Thank you
good.
very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your
Thanks.
time.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Tom.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you,
out.
ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Thank you. We're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Sure,
Thank you.
5-minute recess.
I need to stand.
Yeah, me too.
Not to put me on the spot.
I suggest we just,
All right.
okay.
Wait a minute. So, Miles, are we back? Thank you. All right, welcome back after a short recess. So, we have, I believe, one item. I think we've checked everything else off. This is the update on the Eversource Hopkinton Ashland transfer line project. So, there's been a number of things happening while I've been out of town. So, but the hearings have been going on, and there was a forum was last night. So I'll turn it over to Steve or Michael or whoever wants to just update on recent events with the transfer line project.
Michael,
So-
why don't you start with just an update, what you can elaborate on for the, with the hearings?
The hearings,
Yeah.
yes. So, a number of members of town staff, so, Evan, Megan, Chief Roby, Chief Alfano, and Doug Small and I went and testified yesterday before the Energy Facility Siting Board, which is the entity that's charged with making the decision on this project and whether or not to move forward at the state level. And Gay was also there as well, our technical consultant, as well as Attorney Winter. And we answered questions from the Siting Board first, and then we answered questions from Eversource's attorney second. I thought it was a productive, a productive hearing. I thought the Siting Board asked very relevant questions. The two things that really kind of emerged as themes were routes and what the pros and cons were for each route. I've also introduced, I guess you could say, a third route, which is doing the alternative route in the shoulder. And then Gay has talked about a hybrid route where you have moving the pipeline off the neighborhoods and into the streets. The other thing but it tied into our second part of our conversation, which was a concern that we had, which was a lack of information from Eversource. So it really put us at a disadvantage in terms of analyzing the alternative route because they didn't have any of the utilities marked out. They didn't have any kind of traffic management plans or attempt to have a conversation with any traffic management plans with us. So we expressed our concern with that. And then, we answered a lot of questions about my introduction of a couple of different topics into my latest information request, which was really, the question has arisen about the need of the project, and then, I referenced the McKenna report, and so we had some discussion about that.
Good. And what do you anticipate the time frame from this point?
So I believe the hearings will continue on Monday. And that's just for Eversource. And then after that section, or that's the evidentiary hearings. After that is completed, each party, meaning the town and the applicant, will file their initial briefs, and then I think we have about a week to file our reply briefs, and those are going to be done in early May. And then the Siting Board can take up to a year sometimes to make a decision.
Right.
I think at the earliest, it's going to be 3 to 4 months.
Right. And at the same time, our Conservation Commission is reviewing this project as well, so we don't really know what time frame is at that process as well, or what the outcome will be at this point. So, so there's
Before you go on, just a question about, so you mentioned Professor McKenna's report, and that was actually entered into evidence. Were there comments about, I understand that Eversource made comments about the report, or were you there for that part of it? or-
Oh, yeah, I was there for
Yeah,
that.
so tell
Yeah, so they did, they basically had comments about my expertise and being able to gauge the expertise of others. It was really more of a procedural concern that they had, in the fact that it was introduced so late in an unorthodox manner.
Right.
Kudos to Attorney Winter for making a strong case to keep my testimony and the report on the record.
That's great, good.
So, yeah.
So, but they didn't specifically attack or rebut or supply information in response to that report or any of our other questions about the necessity for the pipeline?
No. I think the rebuttal is in their initial application, which has their calculations, which shows the need.
Yeah, my recollection is that they kind of referred us back to their original submissions. So there's
Submission,
not
yeah.
a lot of extensive response to some of the things we've raised, at least not yet.
Right.
Seems like, okay.
Okay, so regarding the last evening's forum, Joe, I think you kept some copious notes there in terms of the
22 abutters.
22 abutters.
Abutters.
How many people got up to speak? I know you kept a list of that as well.
19.
So 19. So we had I'm going to guesstimate, we had approximately 50 people in the room.
That's a good guesstimation.
Maybe a little bit more. But it was a good spending of time. We heard a lot of the same concerns, certainly. Heard some new concerns. I thought it was, everybody was respectful. So I think at this point, the way we left it at the end of the meeting was that, the statement I made actually was that I anticipated that we as a board, because everybody in the room was encouraged to communicate with the siting board in terms of giving their particular opinion, I anticipated that we as a Board of Selectmen would communicate to the siting board as well. So, which I would, open up for discussion. My thoughts about what we would communicate have to do with this lack of information in certain areas. And, so that would be, I think, the concern. If I were to assign, let's say, the chair to compose something, that would be the areas that I would at least initially want to see covered.
And I don't think Eversource actually thought that we would go for intervener status and just let this thing fly. That's my feeling.
Sure.
Just by reading some of the transcripts from the last couple of hearing transcripts. Like someone said earlier, David versus Goliath. And that's the take. We have to supply all this information, and they don't care. They're not going to provide that. So we have to demand it, we have to request it, and I think it's the right thing to do. There's a lot about environmental impact with the type of fuel and fossil fuels that are being utilized, and the global warming aspect of it. I mean, a lot of people spoke about that last night. What was it, a 24-year window?
12 years.
12-year window. And it's going to take 5 years for this project to be completed, so you have 7 years left with, a potential of a major catastrophe with respect to, global warming, as the experts say. So, having heard all that and having looked at some things on the web earlier today, I mean, we need to address all those in that letter, saying, maybe there isn't a need, and go from there. So, I'm all for doing that.
I prefer the idea of if we're gonna write something more about that we don't have all the information to address it.
No, we don't, you're right.
I think that would be a better approach, because as I said to someone after the meeting last night, just like there are people who are saying they're professionals and experts and, we need to stop with it, we need to diminish by 45% within 12 years, you can find people who will have a different perspective. So
yeah.
I think it's more for us to talk about that we don't have all the information to understand exactly what putting this pipe would do in regards to our environment and our, costs and impact to the town right now.
But that was a lot of the sentiment that I heard last night.
I definitely agree
So,
with
I mean,
that.
I'm not saying that's what we put in the letter, I'm just saying
Okay.
that was the sentiment
Right.
that was heard loud and clear last night. So it wasn't just one or two people,
No,
it was
and I
a
think those
majority.
are, certainly, those are very passionately stated last night. But I think in terms of what's before us, I think we need to focus on the fact that there hasn't been adequate information given about the noticed alternative.
Right.
Noticed alternative.
Right,
yeah.
so that's one area. I think we don't have sufficient information. I know a lot of people have kind of grasped onto the McKenna report as kind of, okay, we've got proof here. Well, I don't know that to be the case. I don't know, you know, how his analysis stands up to, because he's not from the industry. So I think we need to, and I'm not
Right.
negating it. It might be totally valid. I don't know that, but I think we need to, you know, that's an unknown. That's more information that we need. I know we talked about a few other gaps in information that,
Huge gaps.
you
And
know.
So my well, the one thing that I would lead with is to kind of, would be, they need to address the questions that have been raised about necessity, right? I mean, there's other, but that's the first thing. Until you address the necessity question, getting to what Joe was saying, I think, and you don't have to get into climate change, it's just like, do you really need to do this expansion or not? And what's your case for that?
Yeah.
And we've raised some doubts about that. You guys need to address those.
Yeah.
Well-
You know, and one of the other things that McKenna said or suggested was this whole timing thing. Like, you know, it's not, you don't need to do this right away.
Well,
You can
that's an
take the
unknown,
time
you're
and
right.
answer
You're
questions.
right. That's a good,
Yeah.
you know, part of the statement is, you know, that this is an unknown. Why, you know, literally, there could be a year and a half, 2 years before this thing actually puts a shovel to the ground, depending on what goes on with the rest of the process. So I certainly is,
The other thing is, you know, and that's what kind of gets back to our alternative discussion, because, you know, we have a number of pros and cons for each one, and part of it is the lack of information.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's the bottom line.
And the discussion of some of these hybrid alternatives and
Yeah.
consideration of those.
Yeah.
To address some of the, you know, some of the issues.
Yeah. So I would, you know, I would suggest that we assign the chair because I think there's timing here. I don't
Oh,
think we
yeah.
can wait until our next
No,
meeting.
I don't think so either.
So I would suggest we assign the chair the role to draft a letter to the siting board on our behalf and go that way.
You know, work with Michael on that,
Yeah.
I think, and.
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
Try to get,
I would suggest this structure. So I think you would need to open it up and talk about the fact that this is a regional project, and most of the impact, the negative impact, is going to be felt by Ashland.
Sure.
Even though the town's not really receiving any benefit from this. And so it's important that, you know, one of the things I said yesterday was that, you know, this project is too big and too disruptive to be based on a best guess. And then I think you could talk about need, and then you could talk about, a lack of information regarding need, or some justification regarding need, and then lack of information about the routes, specifically the alternative route. It's so much so that you can't really do a thorough analysis, or at least we feel it's really hard to do a thorough analysis on the alternative route with the information that we're given. So, you know, the question is this really a true alternative that can be looked
Yeah.
into? So those are the,
yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, so if you work together to draft something, I think that
Yeah.
would.
I gave you the ideas, Rob.
Yeah, that's right, I
Yeah.
got it all outlined there.
So do we need to make a motion on that?
Yeah, I'll move that we assign the chair to work with the town manager to draft a letter to the siting board on the behalf of the board.
Second. Go ahead.
No, you got it. You're
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Welcome back.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries, thank you. All right, thank you
Okay.
for that, and thank you for all the work folks did in the forum and going into Boston. It's quite Michael and the staff going in there to talk to them, and
Yeah.
we'll be doing it again next week, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
and just also, just so folks that may be watching, this is still an active project in front of the Conservation Commission. Their next meeting and Eversource's next appearance before Concom is on the 22nd, April 22nd, next Monday. So, you know, folks were concerned last night that, and rightfully so, that we can understand why they wouldn't attend the forum. They were invited, they chose not to, but they will be, they appear before Concom, and so they can certainly go and express themselves there as well,
That's an
right?
excellent
Yeah.
point, because they are part of that process.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
thank
okay.
you.
Yep.
All right, I think that leads us to board reports. Mr. Mignani? would
Thank you,
care
Mr.
to-
Chair. So happy to be a participant this past Saturday, where we honored the marathon runners that were representing
yeah.
the town of Ashland. We had quite a few. I also saw some of them along the route. Saw them finish in Boston. One of them was taking pictures at the finish line.
Oh, yeah.
That was there, so that was great. And all in all, I'd just like to thank the police, fire, highway, and the residents themselves, who were very well behaved, even though the weather wasn't conducive in the beginning of the race, but later on, the weather broke and it was wonderful. So kudos to them for, supporting all the runners in the beginning.
Yeah.
But that and, we had the forum like we had last night. Well, I thought it was a very well-run forum. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for getting that all done. And the folks had some legitimate concerns and issues, and they didn't go on deaf ears, that's for sure.
No, it's good to hear.
So that's about it. And welcome back.
Thank you. Yolanda?
So I too was at the Runners Breakfast on Saturday. Thank you to all our runners. Thank you for raising the funds that you did. I too saw a few along the route. That was fun. I've also attended a Mendez Building Feasibility Group meeting. We have our consultants in place. We're going to be doing the next step for a design group. So that should be happening by May, and then looking at setting up forums moving into the fall. So that project's moving forward. Then a couple of announcements. On Monday, April 29th, is the Candidates Forum that is sponsored by the Friends of the Ashland Public Library and We Love Ashland. It is happening from 6 to 9:30, and it's the opportunity, if you are not sure who's running, or if you want to come and hear directly from the people that are running for all the elected positions that are open. Most of the candidates will be there. And there's opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you have a burning question for the candidates, please come out and attend and get your question answered. Then, of course, we have town meeting on Wednesday, May 1st. And then the last thing I'd like to say is Happy Easter and Happy Passover to all those that are
Yes.
celebrating.
Very nice, that's right.
It is that time of year as we
It is
head
that
into
time of
spring.
year.
Very good.
And
Plus,
that's
it's
it.
the Mueller report, too, tomorrow.
There you go. And that's a good note, Yolanda. We're not gonna meet.
We won't meet again until town meeting.
We'll probably likely have a brief meeting before
Before
town meeting.
yeah, but that's the night of, but
Yeah.
otherwise,
This is
they will
true.
not get to see us again.
Yes. How
All
will they
right.
make it?
So, I actually just have one item on my board report tonight, and it was a neighborhood meeting that actually
Oh, that's right.
Joe,
That's right.
Yolanda, and
Oh,
I
that's right, I forgot
attended
about that.
on
Oh.
Saturday.
My neighborhood?
I heard there's a good
No,
one.
not your
No,
neighborhood.
not in your
You went to
neighborhood.
that neigh- you went to, you
Yeah,
did
he
that
did that
neighborhood
one
meeting.
neighborhood,
Yeah,
yes.
I can talk to that as well,
Yeah, you
but,
probably should.
but this was there's a developer, and these are probably some of the more challenging issues that we deal with on a regular basis, is when we have a developer that comes before the town to promote a project, and we have the process with residents, with the developer. Sometimes it's in our purview because we have to create a development agreement, sometimes not. But it's still within our purview to respond to our residents. So this is a gentleman, his name is Charles Zamudo, and he is looking to redevelop the Fusion property. And he's got some, from my perception, he has a good idea with some modifications, I think, and it could be a really good addition, improvement to that corridor. So it's at very basic nascent stages, so it's premature to really describe anything other than the beginning stages of a process. There were quite a few of neighbors from the abutting streets. So it was a good meeting, I think. Heard a lot. heard a lot of passion. But I think it's, when I look at the activities that are going to occur, and Yolanda, you can speak more about the Pond Street improvement. It's
Yeah.
on town meeting as
Yeah.
part of our
Part of our-
capital plan as
Yeah.
well. So when I look at that, the changes that are gonna happen here, this type of project definitely fits into that whole
Right.
mix. And, when you start from the Framingham line, you go to the Holliston line, there is a lot of, there's just a tremendous amount of commercial opportunity there. And I think once the road is improved per the specifications, you're gonna see a lot more willingness to invest in that.
The potential for Route 126 as this road construction project with sidewalks and multi-use lanes
Right.
and trees and lighting and costs that we, the town, are supporting, it's gonna be transformative to that whole area. And I
Right.
think people they're still hesitant, they're not quite sure. And as we know, sometimes change can be difficult, and changing what you're looking at or changing what's around you.
Right.
So we need to
Yeah.
work with the residents and help them through this and help them
Yeah.
find the positive in some of this change
Right.
that's gonna happen.
But I think the key is certainly, when there's a willingness from, certainly from the developers, but ultimately, there's balance somewhere, and I think
Yep.
everybody needs to find that balance point.
Okay.
So just one of the activities from last week, but also you mentioned, I attended by invitation of one of your
Keith, yeah, I
neighbors,
think
Keith
Keith, yeah.
Ferguson he's a trustee of the Great Bend Farm, and they had a trustees meeting, and I attended to answer whatever questions I was capable of answering regarding the Eversource
Heard you
project.
guaranteed no pipeline.
It was very interesting. There was probably about 35 people
Yeah.
there. Weren't a whole lot of questions. It was a few. They talked about the section that was exposed, and we talked about that a little bit. So, but it was good. I'm glad I went,
good.
and I hope they appreciated it.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
And then just a couple other notifications on the calendar. Actually, next week, again, I mentioned Concom is meeting on the 22nd. I've got the Town Manager Forum on the 22nd. Is that correct?
Yes, we will do that.
Oh,
Oh.
Okay, so the Town Manager Forum
Hot off the press.
for the town warrant is scheduled. And where is that being held, Michael?
We're gonna say the Board of Selectmen's meeting room.
Okay, so the Board of Selectmen's meeting room on Monday, the 22nd, and that's,
Concom here?
Well, are they gonna do,
you're gonna televise, so,
if it's Eversource, they're gonna tell us.
yeah.
Great, we'll, to be determined.
Take a
To
look
be
at that.
determined, okay,
But
so,
you're definitely gonna do it Monday, the 22nd?
all right, so Monday, the 22nd, there is the Town Manager Forum somewhere. And that starts at 7 o'clock in Town
Hopefully
Hall.
it'll be broadcast.
And then Tuesday, the 23rd, and this is at the Community Center, there's a volunteer event going on. So, Brandy, you're in the audience. What's it called?
Go to the microphone, so people
Give a
can hear
plug
you.
for your volunteer event.
Thanks. So Tuesday at the community center, we're going to host Creating a Culture of Volunteerism. And this really kind of started as a conversation that was in my living room about 2 months ago, and really talking about community engagement and involvement and making it easier to connect people with volunteer opportunities, because it's really difficult if somebody's new to town or if somebody doesn't know what organizations we have, how to connect with them. So, and I've been talking to organizations, and they need volunteers. They're desperate for volunteers. We've got a great core of volunteers here in Ashland, but it's, the citizen survey said less than 1 out of every 3 people in Ashland volunteer their time. So it's a way to try to get people more engaged. So I have 16 organizations that will be there, and what they are basically doing is giving me literally like a job description. And they're gonna give a quick overview of their group and who they are, but literally, I'm gonna create like what is basically essentially a large giving tree. So each volunteer opportunity will be on a board, and people can literally choose specific volunteer opportunities. And the big thing is that what I'm asking organizations to do is list the time commitment associated with those. So if you know that the Corner Spot is looking for someone to do social media, and it's one meeting once a month plus 5 hours of social media posting a month, somebody can say, oh, I can do that. That's something tangible and easy for me to get engaged. So it's really trying to broaden the amount of volunteers in our town. So I'm
Very
excited.
good,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. So that, the volunteer event is creating a culture of volunteerism on the 23rd at 7 o'clock at the community center. And then Wednesday, the 24th, at the library is again, 7 o'clock, the Net Zero Forum. So we, the Board of Selectmen, assigned the Sustainability Committee the challenge of educating the community about net zero with the goal of a net zero resolution at Fall Town Meeting. So that's, I'm planning to attend that, and I think that's it for next week. One more, sorry. Saturday, April the 27th, there's a organization that is focused on teen suicide, and they're doing the Out of Darkness Walk at Ashland High School, and that's at 9 a.m. I believe it's a very short walk, but that's next Saturday, the 27th, 9 o'clock at Ashland High School. And that's the list, so.
The 24th.
Thanks, Steve. Just a quick note about the Great Bend Farm. It's one of the oldest cluster subdivisions, and it was a groundbreaking. That's why the cul-de-sac is so long. They don't allow those anymore. You know, if it goes back a good half a mile or more. Anyway.
Yeah, that's quite a cul-de-sac back there.
Yeah.
Are you original
Goes up the
owner?
hill, too.
No, and second owner. Yeah, dates from the late 70s.
Yep.
But anyway, thanks for going for that, and
Yeah,
thanks
no
for
problem.
running the forum. Yeah, thanks for mentioning the net zero forum. I'm going to be making some opening remarks at that. People will be looking forward to that very eagerly, I'm sure. I did want to, just on a slightly different note, we talk about the opioid crisis and how it affects people, and it kind of affected Marcia and I very personally on our vacation, because we were driving down Causeway in Florida, and we were rear-ended at high speed by a young man in a big white F-150, this huge truck. We were in a little rental car, and we managed to pull over. We were able to pull over. The car was still operable, and he followed us kind of hesitantly. And followed us, and I was thinking, who is this jerk in this big pickup truck running the people at high speed? And he gets out as a young man, and he started to talk to me. And the truck started rolling backwards. I got his attention and got him to stop. He pulled in, parked, and then he proceeded to basically pass out in front of me. And a crowd came about, and unfortunately, it was a nurse in the crowd. She was, so the mood turned very quickly to who is this jerk to this young man may die in front of us here. And people right away knew, this is the state where things are at, which is hopeful. People knew what was going on almost immediately, that he was overdosing and needed help, and there was a nurse there who helped him, and the people's mood changed from, like I said, that who was this jerk, to we got to save this guy's life, and we're on the phone with dispatch, and when you're waiting for first responders to come,
Seems like a long time,
it takes a
doesn't it?
long time. And these guys came, and they just walked over, and the police and the firefighters showed up, and started giving him first aid. And the first hit of Narcan didn't do it, and they had to give him a second one. Then he came about. It was a very emotional time. But it's just not to regale you with my personal stories, but the point of this is that people know this is going on and want to end this opioid crisis and really want to help. I hope as a country we can really address this, because it's.
Well, the manufacturers need to take some responsibility for what they're doing as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, fortunately,
It's a hell of a
no
vacation
one
story.
no one was seriously injured except our car, and the young man survived.
Yeah.
So that's great.
That's good.
But you could see the tragedy there, like what's going on here.
Yeah.
So. anyway,
Yeah.
but that's my, so with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.